confirm, and go live.
I need to stop bringing up my Discord overlay. And we'll just give people a couple of seconds to get in here.
Yeah, look at those boys.
So this was apparently done on the Smite game channel. This was one of, if not the first stream AGL has done on Smite games so far, if I'm not mistaken.
Ah. Now let's see. I don't think I caught the AGL one. No, I know it was on. I know it was on Monday. Was that this week? Maybe it was this week. I did catch. There was one on a Tuesday, and I was in there for a little bit, but I can't remember who it was.
Well, this one is going to be, I believe, Cabbage is going to be our guy who submitted this one, who is the chair 1, and then the chair 2 to go along with him is going to be Helenu. And I don't know for sure that Helenu will be here live, but I've talked to him before, and I could, if you had feedback for him and for chair 2 in general, I could make sure that gets in front of him. But Cabbage is the one that submitted it, so we're mostly focused on the chair 1.
Which is good, because I've been chair 1ing a lot more lately.
Yes.
So I feel more...
How do you feel about chair 1 versus chair 2, for you in particular?
I think my chair 1 is way better than my chair 2.
Dude.
I think... Well, so I think... I'm trying to think of how to describe it. I don't think my chair 2 is bad by any means.
Okay.
But I definitely, especially with this year, I mean, just like straight up say it, my interest level in like getting nitty gritty with the game has been less. And I think that is very much apparent in my chair 2. Like, right now, I could not tell you what Phalanx does. I know it's like some prots and stuff.
Gore,
and it's like
such an important item right now.
Yeah, and like everybody's buying it. But it's just one of those things where like I think like I still really enjoy Smite, and I still really enjoy watching Smite. But that like that man, I guess like that just air of it being beyond work has been more bleh over the last couple of months than it has been in the past.
Okay.
Which I was talking to people, like, I've talked to people at work about that exact thing, and it's like, yeah, sometimes like it just happens mid-season. That being said, I also think it's just because I wanted to win originally. I don't think I used to be very good at it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I am very long-winded, as you can tell, and
as you
and illustrated several times.
Yes.
And so I don't know, like I will talk, I could fill time. I was really good at filling time. And I've always said this, I don't know Smite, I know the SPL. You know what I mean? Like I can tell you a lot about those players, and I can tell you enough about the game that like blending them together sounds really good. But
wow,
if you ask me like
actually
mechanics, like Mifflin will say like, oh yeah, he did like X, Y, or Z, like that was a blank cancel into this, and I'll be like, dude, I don't know how you could tell that. I don't even think I've ever done those things that you just said. I don't think that's physically possible for me to do in a video game. So
I think that every one gets to the point where they want to try 2, and every 2 gets to the point where they want to do 1. I think that just happens to everybody. I think it's just seldom that you find somebody who ends up shifting over, and then they're like, wow, holy shit, this is like so much better than when I was doing the other.
Yeah. Which is wild, because I'm definitely in that holy shit, I'm so much better. Like I think so like Dave's been on PTO and out for a lot of weeks, the last few weeks.
Okay.
Or if it wasn't Dave, it was someone else, right?
Sure.
And the thing that I've always had, and part of the reason I got hired to begin with, was because I did literally, I think Hindu described me as a Swiss Army knife at one point, where he was like, look, if I tell you to do Hand of the Gods, you're going to do Hand of the Gods. If I tell you to do Paladins, you're going to do Paladins. If I tell you you're going to 1 Paladins, you're going to 1 Paladins. If I tell you you're going to 2 it, you're going to 2 it. Same thing for Smite, same thing for whatever game he threw me at.
Holy shit, Gore.
And so like there was weeks where I came in and on Saturday was the first day of the work week. It was Hand of the Gods. Sunday was the second day of the work week, Hand of the Gods. Monday was Smite. Tuesday was Paladins. Wednesday was Paladins.
Oh my god, Gore. How do you keep that all straight in your head, man?
And what's wild is I look back at it, and at the time I thought I was doing I think I was doing a good enough job, right?
Okay.
I would not describe any of it as a good job. I think looking back on it, I definitely see where it's like, oh man, I was coming in to cast Console Smite as a 1 at that time because there was no way if I'm doing Hand of the Gods and Paladins that I was going to be able to know enough about Smite. And so Hand of the Gods I got to know really well only because it was super long. Like we'd be there for 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Paladins I sucked at for, I would say, a year straight before I think I started to like actually have a good grip on it.
That's fair.
And Smite I was lucky enough that I had already been doing Smite prior to getting hired. So, so I was in a good spot there.
I think if I had to choose one of the three that I had the most innate experience with, I'd probably say you want to be the most experienced with the MOBA, because that's like, in my opinion, the hardest one to deal with.
I think, and the thing is I think like, and this gets way deeper. Like I think part of the problems that Paladins may have had, like launching and pulling in numbers and stuff, is that it's just a super complex game outside of the game itself, because you've got like decks to build, cards that affect your players, things like that, or your characters. And so like there was a lot of outside of game stuff you had to do to make your inside game really good.
Right.
But I think if I could go back to 2018, if I could take where I'm at right now, go back to 2018 as a 1 for Paladins, I think I could put myself in the conversation with like Rain Day and with Pretty Hair. Like I think like it wouldn't just be, hey, here's like the casters for Paladins and then the rest. It'd be like I'm in that echelon now. And I think that was a lot of what was going on like with Smite. I think like a lot of my 2, I don't even think my 2 got worse. I just think that there's better 2s out there. And fair. So instead, I think my 1 got way better. I think that I used to be okay at it. I was good at reading team fights. But then I started, for lack of a better term, giving a shit about commentary as a craft as a whole, as opposed to just how do I, like, can I come in and cast Smite better? Like, yeah, right. Where I'm like, I want to know, what makes a good and eloquent person. Like if you're giving a speech, if you're hosting the desk, which I think helped a lot.
Yeah.
What if I'm listening to a hockey game, or if I'm listening to a football game? Like, what are they doing that I like? What are they doing that I don't like? Where is that line in between? How can I tell? Oh, they're doing this because of the pace of the game, or they're doing this because of whatever. So I started listening to it, and I cared more about getting better at commentary. And it's around the same time that I realized that like I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. I don't like you could tell me in 3 years Smite's gonna be dead, I get fired from my job, something, whatever happens, right? And what am I gonna do? And it's like, well, I still want to pursue casting. You could tell me
doesn't matter like, where, gotta do
Smite's gonna blow up and I'm gonna be here in 5 years, and I'm like, you know what? I'm cool as long as I'm still casting. Like I've kind of like, I got a CS degree in college, and it might be I think on the thank you.
Not to interrupt. Where's the ketchup?
In the fridge.
The fridge? Why?
Because you're supposed to refrigerate it after opening, like it says on the bottle.
Hi, Katie.
Kaizo says hi.
Hi.
She says hi. But I had this realization that I was like, I have this CS degree. It's because I still haven't. We moved 2 months ago now, and we haven't finished putting stuff up. So I have 4 moving boxes behind me, and on the floor next to them is my degree, and that honestly is probably like,
that's a metaphor right there.
That's pretty much the most on par metaphor that there could be for it, where it's just like, it is not. I've used it, like my spreadsheets I program and stuff, but there's so much where it's like, man, I got that whole ass degree. And now I want to do something where I don't have a degree in it. I just have 5 years experience and hopes and dreams.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm getting to the point of, because I'm doing a philosophy major with a double minor in business and entrepreneurship, and I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I don't even know if I want to, like, if everything goes right, I probably don't want to ever use any of that.
Yeah. It's kind of rough because, like, I think even JMac has he has like a degree in graphic design, and it's like we've got these arguably really marketable skills. Although I would say like CS is definitely, like, I was an average student at best anyway.
Sure.
So now that I'm 5 years out of my degree and I've been working in a job that does not use it, I think that there's no chance in hell, especially with like how the tech market is, that I'd ever like get a job in that anyway. And so I feel like I've actually shot myself in the foot where, like, I realized way too late what I wanted to do. I have a degree in something completely different. My skills in that were mediocre to begin with, and now they're rusty mediocre. And then I've got a lot of experience doing the thing, but then depending on who you're talking about, they're like, oh, well, it's in gaming. I don't know. It's this whole weird conversation. I can fight people on it.
Well, let's get started so that we don't have to fight anybody here, Gore. So
or fight people and then get started.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got a few people here that are willing to fight if need be. We do. I don't know if you want to. I obviously am streaming this on Twitch. If you want to watch the chat, you're welcome to pull that up. But otherwise, I can just tell you what the chat is saying. Cool. Because we do have a question already from Cabbage, who is the chair one for this first cast that we're doing. How do you improve your casting overall rather than for specific games? So kind of like how you were talking about, not just like as a craft as opposed to just being a Smite caster.
I think that there's a lot you can learn from a single game, but especially like from your own perspective, I do think you have to kind of look at like what patterns, like what have you been doing well. Like if you had a moment in a game that you thought was really good, go back and listen to it. First off, you're gonna hate it. I'm sorry, that's just how it works. You're gonna listen back to it and you're gonna think, damn, I kind of wish I had done that instead.
Yeah.
But you know, like take those moments and kind of break down why you liked them. And I think along like trying to balance those, it's listening to other casters. I think like outside of just listening to your own games, like Stanley Cup finals are going on and like TNT broadcast has been really good. Like listen to that guy. Why is that play-by-play guy so good that he has that job and he's doing what is essentially the Super Bowl for hockey? Like if he's doing that, what is it about that cast that sounds really good? What about it could you take and maybe translate to yourself? And I think that you could do that by practicing other games. You could do that just by listening to other people. If they're like any hobby or interest you have that has commentary, listen to those dudes and just like see what they're doing and see if you can relate that. Like, I know F. was really like, he's really big into basketball. And when me and him would talk about Smite casting, he would talk about the fact that he would try to cast it the same way he'd be casting like a basketball game. Like his team fights were much more big, bombastic, you know, Barracuda shoots, gets to, finds the kill, gets the fire. Like he had a cadence, he had a beat, and like that's what he was going for because it was at that pace that he was used to watching and listening to and doing. And then I think that taking stuff like that and trying to figure out, okay, so how can that apply to Smite? Like Smite has a lot of things that can relate to CS:GO or to basketball in ways it can relate to like hockey. If you look at like how fast some of the action can get. Some ways, yeah, I see Cabbage said soccer. Like sometimes it relates to soccer because nothing's happening, but how do you make it sound super interesting? Because on paper, no goal was scored. How do you make it happen? How do you make it sound exciting? How do you make the game interesting? But then when you have that knowledge, you can say, well, you know, they just picked up this, they picked up that, and those all like made a huge difference for this team, and like you can generate interest in ways that otherwise just weren't otherwise there. Struggling with that for Rocket League. Filling time, dude.
With Rocket League?
Think about this. Rocket League's just fast-paced, better soccer, okay?
Fast-paced, better. I'm kind of sold on that idea. That sounds because I hate soccer.
You're a car with rockets strapped on the back, and you're playing soccer.
It's just cooler
It's
soccer.
so
It really
fun.
is.
I also have like 500 hours in Rocket League.
Oh, I have 0 hours in Rocket League. I just think the game is sick.
It's so fun.
It's also really nice that, like, even if you don't have any idea about esports, you can look at that and go, hey, that looks kind of like soccer. And you can still figure it out.
And you know what? I've argued, like, that is, I think, the reason that Rocket League has had a lot of success. Yes. Because I could pick up Rocket League right now. I don't think I'm going to be as good as the last time I played. It's been like 8 months, if not longer. But at the same time, it's going to be the same game. It's going to play the same.
Yep.
I pick up Smite in after 8 months, and the items are different. You know what I mean? Like, a lot changes because it's mobile. A lot's going to change.
Walking down the lanes.
Yeah. Versus Rocket League, where at base, it's soccer. Like, no matter what, at the base, the game is exactly something that has existed for a long time, and you're going to recognize it no matter what.
Yes.
There's not a lot you have to learn, but there's a lot of nuance to it. Like, the way the aerials work, timing your boost with your teammates, like, the way that rotations on the map are working. There's a lot of cool stuff in Rocket League. Pinches, like, that's something that's, like, super high-tech that you can recognize if you've been watching for a long time. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you know what it is because it looked really cool and they got a goal.
All right, but we've got Smite here today. Rocket League is sick and all, but we do have Smite to talk about today. So let's go ahead and jump into our first VOD here, because we could do 2 or 3. We'll see how long each VOD takes. But again, first one is going to be Chair 1 is Cabbage, Chair 2 is
Narwallaby on production. We're here with the finals match of the AGL Masters kickoff tournament between the Hydrus Hachiman Fan Club and
is
the
this
Royal
game
Ghost.
These are all best of 1s from this VOD. So this is from a tournament.
Yeah.
To run,
I'd just say it's the finals. Start it up
the
a little.
Hachiman Fan Club, which I'm absolutely loving these long names. I'm not. Sumik, Aishane.
At this point, though, it's been the full tournament, so I get
Fox, and Macaroni. Whereas on the Royal Ghosts, we have Depp Muffin, Kairos RPC, Jolliver, Kilcan Kenny, and Dr. Dilf. And Helanu, the desk brought up the sustain that the Royals
big fan
Royal
of Dr.
Ghosts
Dilf
comp provides. How do you think that's going to match up into this aggression that Hydrus Hachiman Fan Club seem to have drafted here?
Like the question.
Bakasura and Vamana is scary. I think if they somehow survive the dive of a Baka Vamana late game, that they will be in a great spot. And if you survive those 2 ultimates, you should just win the fights. Sumik just gets a solo kill onto Muffin. A little bit of an early spill there in the solo lane. I mean, just a straight up solo kill.
Yeah, Depp Muffin falling down within the first minute of play here in the finals match.
I don't know. It's so awkward online. Because online, it's so much more difficult to rip from your co-caster. But they were talking, you're in mid, or they're talking mid, talking Bakasura. First off, I know you had said this, like, the Chair 2 will probably watch this. More wise, like, I heard, like, Bakasura, Vamana, like, dive, that's scary, but, like, dig a little more into the meat.
Yes.
Just to why that is. But I think, like, you are in solo, I could tell with your camera, or at least you knew something was happening over there. And I heard, like, and it brought the attention over there. I think it should, like, the 2 probably could have just, it looks like something's happening in solo lane, and dropped it. But at the same time, I think that in other circumstances, ripping it from him and just, like, with your immediately pull into the fact that, like, and Sunic has a lot of damage here. He gets the first blood here in the finals or whatever. Like, to give it that amp, because otherwise it kind of, like, for the grand finals so far, like, the intro came in, kind of felt relaxed as opposed to, like, having some energy behind it, and then the kill, because the 2 took it instead, just kind of was like, and there's a kill.
And we've talked about in the last couple of episodes how obviously, like, you give the disclaimer that casting at the end of the day is subjective for, like, a lot of what goes. Like, what you do is, some people will say it's really good, some people will say I would have done that differently. There are obviously some things that are like, full stop, your Chair 1 should be talking over the Fire Giant fight or the Titan Siege, but sometimes there are things that go back and forth between different people. I personally advocate for chair 2 somehow leading into a transition so that the chair 1 doesn't have to rip. I find that especially on Discord, because these are obviously amateur casters, so all of it's going to be through Discord latency. I try to tell people as much as possible, set it up so that your chair 1 doesn't have to rip. How do you feel about like full stop? Should you always rip there, or should you allow the chair 2 to try to take that one? How do you feel about that?
I think there are certain pillars in Smite that if, like, so even recently, like, Trelly has taken first blood calls from me, and it's not bad, because he can still get the energy up for it, right?
Right.
And then your job as the chair 1, if he did the first blood and he got hype about it, you've got to energy match and kind of keep it going for a moment to bring it back down. And it's really difficult because, like, if your 2 takes part of the fight or the only action and then drops it for you, what are you supposed to do now? Are you are you the one who's going to break it down? Like, that's not your job at that point. And so there's definitely moments, I think I agree with you. Like, I prefer dropping it in a way that leads into the action, has a little bit of a build up, and gives the chair 1 like a ramping point. And then in this case, I think especially if it's going to, like, the way it came out, I think this is one of those moments where, because it wasn't going to get ramped over to you, you almost have to rip it. I think First Blood's, like, important. Depending, like, First Blood can set the pace of the game. Excuse me. And can really get the cast in, like, that zone. I feel like if that was a second kill, probably doesn't make that big of a difference. If it's a best of 3, that doesn't make that big of a difference. But coming in as like a best of 1, the intro needs to have a little more energy behind it. First Blood, like the first Gold Fury, every Fire Giant, and like every team fight have to have a lot of energy behind them, just to, like, those are like the absolute peaks across the game. And then everything else in between, you can figure out, like, on the fly. Like, a Gold Fury fight where there's not a lot happening, your 2 could just talk over that. Because who cares? Like, if there's not a huge fight happening, then it doesn't need to be broken down by the 1. Versus a team fight that has, like, implications for the next 3 minutes, that needs to be hit by the 1 pretty hard.
Sure.
So that one, I think that's one of those moments to rip, but I think a grand scheme, ideally, and especially online, it's better not to rip just because it's so difficult when you're on the internet.
Yeah.
Because by the time he realizes you're ripping, you've been talking for 2 seconds, which is a long time.
Yeah.
So ideally, your 2 kind of ramps it in just a little stronger.
In the solo lane, I mean, just a straight up solo kill.
Yeah, Detmufen falling down within the first minute of play here in the finals match. So that's First Blood over to Hydra's Hachiman fan club and getting this Vamana ahead as Emoticon Father, taking a lot of damage, trying to get aggressive into the Royal Ghosts. Despite being on the Discordia, a pick that a lot of people seem to think is a poke-oriented pick, something safe, it seems like the entirety of Hydra's Hachiman fan club want to just go.
It is a good ultimate to just send into the backline, cause chaos while the Bakasura and the Vamana are diving. Even if you hit the Terra, that means that Terra doesn't want to group up with the team, able to help out with that dive. I also do like the disco into the Susano. I know that Susano does have a lot of ways to get on top of the disco, but the cripple from that Discordial is Kenny could be in trouble. Instead, maybe getting aggressive here. The horrific comes out. Looks like everyone will be okay. I say that Kenny is so low, falls down to Macaroni.
This is rough because it's a note that's not even real, like, because Cabbage, I know, like, Cabbage is listening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And what sucks is, as we had just mentioned, ripping when you're online is difficult at best. and this isn't like, this is something that's unfortunate, but it's also not on you. Your 2 should have dropped 30 seconds ago. Like there were like, they mentioned Susano having like a good fight with Discordia. The minute they stopped talking about that and there was action in the duo, it should have been set up for you and they should have gotten out of there. So like, that's just an overhold on someone else. Unless you're in person and able to like jump up and smack them while you're talking, there's not a lot of ways to really get that over to you. And what double sucks is that like, those are like, the reason it's I don't like using this word, but I can't think of a better way to describe it. The reason it's just bad on their part is because those are your moments. Like, as a 1, like, that's your time. And to walk over it, not just walk over it, but also to not really provide the same energy that the 1 would over that fight, it just makes it... If I hadn't been paying attention, if I wasn't watching the game directly, it's on my second monitor. There's nothing that pulls my attention. Like, there was no hype, there was no call that's like, oh, I need to look over there, like something's happening. It was just the same guy still talking. And in the same kind of set of voice. And I think, like, you do get in there, do get, like, your voice on there, but that's another instance of should have dropped way faster from him.
And that is also something that we've talked about a couple of different times, is like, a lot of people who are watching esports are watching it while doing something else. So you do need something to, hey, this is different from the ordinary pace of the game. This is why you should be looking over kind of energy, kind of volume, whatever.
Disco, but the cripple from that Discordia is Kenny could be in trouble.
Like, right there.
Getting aggressive here, the horrific
could be in trouble, should have dropped.
Looks like everyone will be okay. I say that if Kenny is so low, falls down to Macaroni.
Yeah, Koja Fox gets the knock up there, and the aggression from Horus, plus that high range follow-up from Macaroni's good, but Ice Shane jumping in off of some more setup from Koja Fox. Kairos gets caught out. And now that is a 3-0 lead in terms of the kills here for Hydros Hachiman Fan Club, and roughly a 1K lead not even 3 minutes into the game.
You did so much that I love right there.
Ghost.
Tell me what you loved about it.
You didn't try to overcompensate. So I think this happens a lot, especially like in the amateur scene. I used to do this a lot. You missed out on like the action of the first 2 kills. And there are a lot of people who would try to overcompensate. Oh, I didn't get the first 2, so I'm going to hype it up right here. You gave that kill exactly what level it was at. It was good play, enough to grab some attention, but not a game-changing play. On top of that, right afterward, you recapped the gold lead and the time, which, you know, there's like different rules. Depending on the sport, people are going to tell you there's times to recap the time. I think that if there is something that significantly happens large in Smite, or if nothing has changed for a little while, hitting the timer and the gold is like, first off, it's chair 1 pillars. If you're chair 2 and you mention either of those, you need to get punched in the damn face. Shut the hell up. That is not your job.
Don't
it is,
Gore, please.
Dude, we had 7 commentary reviews in a row. That has been Mifflin's one note for like every single one of them. Was just stop mentioning the gold. That is something like, you come in and you're like, oh yeah, after this kill, they're up 3-0, so you get the kill count. You say who it's in favor of, that they have a 1,000 gold lead, and that we're 3 minutes in. Which, those are all just great pillars to kind of touch back on. Time, gold, kill count, like anything that's literally up on that top bar, that's just chair 1 city. It's all waiting for you. Like, it's all useful for a tier 2. If you know, Kaizo, if me and you are casting, I'm 1 year 2. And you tell me there's 1,000 gold lead, the next sentence out of your mouth better be why that 1,000 gold lead is important.
Yeah.
If you just say it for the sake of saying it, that's where there's some trouble. But I think as long as, like, if the 2 provides context, it's less of a problem. I think that there's definitely other ways to approach it. Like, hey, just look at the item difference in mid, right? That's the 2 way of saying, look at the gold lead. But you bring it to something that is in your like realm where you can talk about why it's a big difference. So I think you just hit a lot of good pillars there. And just hold on to those guys.
for Hydrus Hachiman Fan Club, and roughly a 1K lead not even 3 minutes into the game.
Disaster for...
Oh, the other thing I wanted to, I thought you were getting to was, in addition to all the good stuff you just said, Cabbage also doesn't hang on to that for too long, and that's
you've got out.
that amateurs do a lot of is the other guy talked for a long time, so I need to talk for a long time. You don't. It's just whatever fits the situation at hand. If there's a fight that breaks out, then sure, keep going. But if there's nothing going on, there's no reason you need to keep talking over nothing as a chair 1 just because the chair 2 talked for a while. And vice versa, obviously.
There's been casts like recently where I've been wanting for like Trelly or Myth. They'll have talked for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes straight because that's the pace of the game we were in. They'll drop it for me. I'll say maybe 10 seconds worth of stuff. If they're lucky, 15. But there are times where like Charlie will he'll be like, yeah, and talking about whatever, like talking about the Susano. And then he'll go, so yeah, it's just really unfortunate, that he goes down there. And I'll go, well, like, what does that mean implication-wise for Hydra's Hachiman Fan Club? Like, getting that kill over to the Hachi, having 2 kills in the duo lane, what does that mean? And that's like 10 seconds of conversation. But now he's going to talk for another 3, and I don't have to worry about it unless a team fight comes up.
Gives him a direction to keep going so you don't have to say anything.
Yeah, and if he doesn't want to talk about it, he's going to say, oh, it's really good for the duo lane, but honestly, I'm looking over towards mid. And that's his way of saying, hey, that was a dumb question. I'm going to go... I don't care about that point. I want to talk about this now.
Caught out. And now that is a 3-0 lead in terms of the kills here for Hydrus Hachiman Fan Club, and roughly a 1K lead not even 3 minutes into the game.
Disaster for the Royal Ghost, just not winning any of the fights around the map. And Kairos falling down, you've got your support falling down. The only lane that's okay so far is Jolliver over on this Merlin. He's still okay so far, got to that T2 just fine, but gonna need some stabilization here as we get going for the Royal Ghost.
Helanu, I have a question.
I might have an answer.
All right. So they are called the Hydrus Hachiman Fan Club. If Macaroni does not go Hydrus here, I think he's trolling. With that being the case, what item slot do you think that's going into? You think that's going second, third?
I don't think he's going to build it, despite the meme, unfortunately. I
love that question.
I agree that they should just have to forfeit their gems if they don't. But I don't think it's what they did name themselves after it. It is the finals. I mean, they do get to pick their conferences regardless of whether they win or lose this game. But there's a fairly significant amount of gem difference between the first and second place here. If he's going to build it, I imagine it's, a 4th or 5th item slot type of pickup, but I don't think we're going to see the Hydras from the Hachiman Fan Club.
So you think it's just a ploy for them to...
I like that from Helanu. I also especially like, goofing and gaffing about it and then taking the question seriously at the end.
Yeah, still treating it like it's a genuine question, like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to answer that, though. The only thing, so the question, first off, the question was really good. The banter was really good. The conversation afterward from Helanu was really good. Especially because he doubled down and made like a joke, like if they don't, maybe they should have to forfeit their gems. Like that's just funny to me. And if it's funny to me, that means chat's gonna either love it or hate it. It's a 50-50 sometimes with them.
Fair enough.
The only issue I have, and this one's where it gets kind of personal. That fight, it ends. There's a little bit of a lull in mid, right as Susano's throwing his ult here. And I think if I'm wanting that, I'm using that as kind of like a touchstone point if I don't have anything else to say about what was just said. So like that's your reset. If you want it, it's just, oh, well, there's, what is that guy's name? Cairo? Cairo. There we go. Kairos. Like, oh, Kairos throws out an ult mid, gets a little damage out there, just looking for the reset, and then you can touch on whatever you need. That essentially, it's buying time while keeping it relevant. At the same time, that's not going anywhere. You can kind of tell that's not going anywhere unless he's going to teleport in, and there's no way he's teleporting in, so it's not the world's most game-changing ult, and it doesn't have to be mentioned.
Meta drafts.
So you think it's just a ploy for them to let them have Hachiman, thinking surely he's going to troll in his build, and then he doesn't, he wins, and that's how they made it to finals.
Yeah, both of these teams getting incredibly meta drafts. Really, both sides. I don't think you could complain too much here. Every character that is being played in this game is at least in the top 5 in their role. So they're drafting from the tier list on this one.
Hey, using what's reliable is Shane diving in onto Kairos, and Kojo was just waiting there with the 3, ready to teleport in at a moment's notice. But Kairos was able to get out, didn't even have to burn any beads there.
You handled what was a really awkward drop super well there. It was like, it was very difficult to tell if Helanu wanted to stop talking, but because a team fight broke out, it didn't matter anymore. You had something that immediately you could just go, cool, I'm just gonna go.
And diving in onto Kairos, moment's notice. Hey, using what's reliable is Shane diving in onto Kairos, and Kojo was just waiting there with the 3, ready to teleport in at a moment's notice. But Kairos was able to get out, didn't even have to burn any beads there, because, well, he doesn't have any beads to burn, so able to get out on his own merits.
That is something that a lot of amateur casters, I think, could use more of, is a well-timed pause. I don't think that time was necessarily well-timed, or that pause was well-timed, but taking a moment to, you know, breathe, give yourself a second to think, give chat or whoever's listening a second to kind of get a mental reset, and then proceeding into the next point, especially after, like, you know, take a deep breath after a fire giant sort of thing. I do think that could be used more. I don't think this is the time for it, but I do think that you're absolutely right, Anthony. It would be super brave to, like, take the pause there.
That's another one of those things that's difficult online versus, like, IRL. If Trelly finishes saying something, I can sit there for a moment and, like, I've had Mifflin look at me because I will just leave it quiet for a little bit, maybe sometimes too long. And then you'll just hear me go, well, we're 15 minutes in. It was just like, yep, he had nothing to say.
Farmed by the Bakasura, and the aggression that Hydra's Hachiman fan club has drafted here. You think that's going to start to reel its ugly head more and more as this game goes on?
Yeah, it could be a little scary for the Susano early. Baka going with that traditional Golden Blade, obviously a very fast-paced jungle build, but it's Transcendence from the Susano, which is pretty normal, but he's going to take much longer to come online than this Baka. I mean, Baka is already a threat. As soon as he hits level 5 and has that Golden Blade, Baka can just kill you. And well, Susano's, spike at Transcendence certainly isn't bad. It's not going to match the farming capabilities or the damage output of this Baka in the early. Speaking of which, Baka looking for potentially a jump here, but if not, at least be taking away this blue buff.
Yeah, debating whether to farm the blue buff or
that was a good drop.
Going to decide on this blue buff here. Depending on what Depth Movement does, could choose to stay around a little longer.
I think you could have dropped it like a couple seconds earlier, just in case he does.
Could have dropped with like the jump, yeah.
Right.
Like
the fact that he doesn't jump the wall, that's totally fine.
What did he say? Like Baka could be looking for the jump here,
and
if you want, that could be that you could be done.
Right.
But I don't mind because he doesn't immediately jump, and you can see like the blue buff timer.
Speaking of which, Baka looking for potentially a jump here, but if not, at least be taking away this blue buff.
Yeah, debating whether to farm the blue buff or Depth Movement. Going to decide on this blue buff here. Depending on what Depth Movement does, could choose to stay around a little longer. But no,
Blaze? Thank you for the
he
follow,
will just back on away. I'm just wondering, the Transcendence not even built yet for Kairos. So this Asana going to take so long to actually get active. Meanwhile, this Bakasura hitting that point where it can just farm everything incredibly rapidly. Do you think Kairos is even really going to be able to fight back if Aishin wants to invade a buff, or Royal Ghost is going to have to sit here twiddling their thumbs until late game?
Yeah, I don't think you want to take that fight right now, at least for a while on this Asano.
Cabbage, you don't have to worry,
It's
because I think the way that was framed, because what you were saying was, like, the transcendence hasn't been finished yet. And, like, grand scheme, the point is, not only is it not finished, but then he has to stack it on top of that. Like, he's in it for the long haul right now. So just because, like, he backs and upgrades it to tier 3 doesn't diminish your point there.
getting his Hydras, getting his Crusher, all of those proc items that the character uses so well. I mean, he does have a lot of ability to try and at least get to the farm at this, as quickly as a Bakasur is able to. But don't expect him to be wanting too many fights in this early game.
Yeah, trying to go and steal those chest camps. Instead, going to go back and just grab his own if he can't have the one on the opponent's side of the map. And I think this pause does give us some time here to go over just the general state of things. I just Hachimon Fan Club roughly having a 2k gold lead over the Royal Ghosts, not even, or slightly past that 7-minute mark. So definitely going to be putting a kind of damper on what Royal Ghosts are going to do. We did say that their draft did center more around the team fight. I mean, the sustain from the Terra, the Guan Yu, and that ability damage from the Merlin. But the pace things are currently going at. Are the Royal Ghosts going to even make it to that late game? And how do you think they need to play this in order to make it there in one piece?
That's a good question.
I think right now,
especially for a pause.
Okay.
Yes.
2K's a lead. Don't get me wrong, but it's not so much that you can't contest Gold Furies. You can't contest.
Good answer so far.
I think just making sure they do a good job of locking down their own farm. As I say that, little scuffle happening here in the jungle.
Yeah, Killcam died. He sat there so long, took so much damage, and it looks like he might just get out. Has the double dash in order to keep getting away. So despite getting autoed by Baka for a couple straight seconds there, plus the Baka ult, I mean, with just the Golden Blade, not really able to break through this Terra when you have the sustain and when you've got that gauntlet.
Yeah, I do like that both supports have gone.
That's a weird drop.
Gauntlet.
I couldn't tell when you were finishing your thought there. It almost
I thought there was more
words were coming, right?
So much damage, and it looks like
also,
he might
I think for
get...
Halanu, because I did verify that he is going to be watching this one back after the fact. He's busy at the moment, though. I think an earlier drop in this engagement here could have done wonders for this, because it was kind of awkward, and I would prefer the chair 1 to take the awkward stuff over the chair 2, and I think that you were just a little bit late to get out of there.
So long, took so much damage, and it looks like he might.
Although, Cabbage, you do pick this up very well. Like, the energy, you collect that. It's kind of weird, but you transition it very well into the next point and, like, making sure that we don't lose the momentum of the game in that engagement.
Yeah.
Keep getting away. So despite getting autoed by Baka for a couple straight seconds there, plus the Baka ult, I mean, with just the Golden Blade, not really able to break through this Terra when you have the sustain and when you've got that gauntlet.
Yeah, I do like that both supports have gone for that gauntlet. Thebes this game. Prophetic, you see less and less as you start to go up in the ranks in your comp gameplay. It can just be kind of hard to stack at the highest level. Teams are better about not letting you get those stacks for free. Thebes just opens up your build a little bit more. It's guaranteed prots. It makes you tanky in the early game, so you can focus on your relics and maybe potentially some of those utility-based items in your second slot rather than being forced to go into some hard defense in that second slot. Looking at mid builds as well, surprised to see the conduit gem coming out for the Discordia.
I don't
Not
agree,
a character that I usually think of is loving this conduit Chronos build.
I also am happy that Halanu's just kind of held it.
Mm-hmm. Like pointing himself in a direction after the point was over.
There's not really been this goes back to what me and you were talking about, I think, before you even hit the stream live. Like, there's times where it's like, okay, maybe you've been talking for a long time and it needs to change pace. That, like, you weren't in one of those moments and there was nothing really going on. So if you give that back to Cabbage, the only thing that's going to happen is a question's going to come back your way in about 30 seconds, if not less. So just being able to go, hey, this is what I want to talk about now, and like move yourself over there is just a good thing to do. And to keep barreling through, I mean, look, 9 minutes in Smite, unless somebody's like making a crazy hell play over to Gold Fury, you've got a little bit before Pyro's up and like the next big thing happens.
Right. Although, to be clear, it's not bad if you hand it back over to Cabbage there, as long as Cabbage does have some kind of direction to point you in. It's just, you do have the option to continue talking. Just because you've talked for a while doesn't mean
There's
you
a
have
little
to stop
fork road.
talking. Right.
Where you can just
Character
keep going on your own and talk about mid laners, whatever. Drop it and hope to God Cabbage has something to say.
wanting to have that cooldown and that little bit of extra clear on this disco.
We're seeing Aishin get really active. Saw blue buff invade a little bit earlier. Royal Ghost had it warded. Still were not able to make it over on that side of the map when it came up. Kairos just not in position. And so Hydra's Hachiman fan club, we've said, just getting so aggressive up to the back camps, walking around just this whole time. And they've been out farming, not even necessarily going for kills. They've been sitting on 3 kills for quite a while now.
Yeah, and I think as long as Ghosts are able to secure most of
I feel like there was a
farms,
sentence missing from the end of that to
Yeah.
really tie that point together.
Right. I was just
Because,
about
like,
to
you
say-
mentioned farming the experience buffs. You mentioned that they've been sitting on 3 kills. And, like, you kind of mentioned, like, the 2 things that were relevant to get them ahead, but didn't really tie them together. I think that's, like, a moment where you could have been, like, you know, like, Aishin has been farming these blue buffs. Like, Kairos just hasn't been able to get over there. And that's where they're winning this. I mean, they've been, you know, up 3-0 for minutes now. It's all in the experience camps. That's where they're finding their priorities. That's where they're finding this 2,000, 2,500 gold lead. And then all of a sudden you said the same thing, but it had a little more relevance to each other, and it gave people the gold lead again.
And when in doubt, if you catch yourself talking like that and you don't know how to finish that, a good, easy question for a chair 1 is, who does that favor? Who's going to be... Is there a team that wants to take this later? Is one of these drafts better than the other right now? Does somebody need to be playing more aggressively? Point your chair 2 in the direction of, there's nothing going on now, what are we talking about later? What are the things to keep an eye on?
What is the next big change?
For the
Or do they need to
Bucks,
do something now? That's all. I love that.
For quite a while now.
Yeah, and I think as long as Ghosts are able to secure most of their farm, they should be okay here. 2K, you know, nothing too scary. It's really about when does Hydra's Hachiman fan club decide that they want to pull the trigger on this gold Furies, on this pyromancers. It is going to be the pen build, it looks like, coming out for the Bakasuras. It's not going to have as much objective.
I'd like you, Halanu, to give me a potential answer to that question that you posed. Like, if you're going to ask me, when do the Hydra's Hachiman fan club want to do the Gold Fury, tell me when you think they're going to do the Gold Fury and why you think they're going to do the Gold Fury, as opposed to letting that one just hang in the air there.
Yeah.
Pen build, it looks like, coming out for the Bakasuras. It's not going to have as much objective shred as he would with the crit build. He's going to have that more consistent DPS. Into characters like Terra and Guan, I think that pen build might
This could be a fight.
better. Shane,
Hold
Nice
it in.
catch.
Shane jumps away, gets the Typhoon, and he does go down thanks to the joint
Beautiful
efforts
cabbage.
of Kairos
Yeah.
and Dr. Dilf. Coach of Fox comes in trying to get something done, and the Golden Apple still not going to be able to hit Paybert. Trying to at least scavenge this shield buff, but not going to be able to. Royal Ghosts come in. Macaroni was able to get a little bit of farm, but I mean, losing your jungler for nothing, gotta hurt.
That is the perfect way to do the rip there. I 100% think that was the right call. And Halanu, if you hear him going for the rip, you got to get out of there. You got to.
Not only that, if his phrase is "it looks like there's about to be a fight," that's like that might be the biggest clue as a chair 2 that you need to shut the hell up. It's like there is. You know, there's other, like, if he just says, like, oh, look at Aishin here, that's going to pull your attention. The minute you see that there could be more than just a little scrap, that's you got to, like, pull the plug on your own casting to let the one in there. But like you said, the rip is really good. It stutters a little bit. That's just going to be some stuff that I think that you deal with online, but I agree, like, get out of there a little faster if you're the 2. And then the pace of that was really good, because you even, like, you hit the impact, they kill the jungler, and then it slows down a little bit, and then they get their shield buff, and then it slows down again, and then you just losing your jungler for nothing can't feel great, or whatever it is that you'd said at the end. And it's just like, that's the perfect point for your 2 to just go, yeah, no, that sucks.
Thank you for the softball, chair one.
Able to, shut down the Shane's, not shut him down in the sense of goal, but stop him farming. Let Kairos pick up some levels here, coming back even with this Bakasura now. As I said, the Baka going that pen style build isn't going to snowball quite as hard as he will. The crit build is going to have that consistent DPS once he gets there. Gotta feel good for Kairos to get an early kill going back his way. Try and stop the snowball from Hydra's Hachiman.
Yeah,
the only thing I think could have been better there is just tying it together with the, like, because that conversation was happening not too long ago, right? How Ishane was getting all the experience camps, and just saying getting the kill onto Ishane and getting the shield buff, like getting the experience back, is making up for, and just kind of tying it in to reference the game, so it feels more like it's this thread that's moving instead of like isolated events. That, I'm gonna be real with you, is super nitpicky. Because the rest of it was really good.
Very good way to clat back against this Bakasura. I also do want to note,
It's always a
Jolliver
good sign when
sitting
we're
at
going
level
over the
12,
nitpicky
able to
stuff, though. That
outfarm
means that everything else
this
was good up
Discordia
until
of
Mhm.
Emoticon Father, likely due to that rotation that really didn't gain anything earlier on in the match.
Yeah, did a good job of just realizing that he's never going to make it to that fight in time. As Royal Ghost just sneak a Pyromancer.
Wow.
Again, it's the same thing we saw in their semifinal match. It's just Merlin burn. That was just the
I'd like you to hold on to your point, and then we can talk about the Pyromancer later. Like, there's not really a whole lot going on past the Pyromancer. You can tell that nobody's really interacting with each other. You've got a good probably 10, 15 seconds to finish up whatever your thought was, and then you can briefly mention, Pyromancer does go down there, blah, 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 or just let your chair 1 take it. I mean, the camera was on it. We all know that it happened.
Yeah. The other thing is, it feels like, and Cabbage, you would probably know better, but that didn't feel like you were dropping. It felt, that was one of those, going back to the, like, well-timed pauses, that felt like a well-timed pause, right? Where, like, nothing's going on. You can kind of tell, like, if you're looking at the mini-map, you know that Pyro is getting started up, but there's no fight over it. So it's like this, you can end the point.
I was just realizing that...
Helano jumps in there,
Father,
but it could have just been a little bit of like a, like, oh yeah, and what up. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even remember what you were saying. But you end your point, and you're silent for a moment. And then if you just go, and then the Royal Ghosts sneak a Pyromancer here. Like, if you're the one saying it, and there was, because at that point it's been silent, so it gives you the next thing to jump onto. You could mention, oh, and then Jolliver's the one who picks up the Runic Bomb. You can ask, is that, like, considering the gold lead we've been talking about, how big is that for them to be able to get the first, neutral objective of the game? Like, there's a lot of bounce off points for your 2. But that definitely felt like it was a pause you wanted that got taken from you.
And Cabbage says he'd rather pause and think than give someone a shoddy point. And I'm curious about your thoughts on this, Gore. So in competitive chess, you want to ideally think when the clock is on the other person. So you make your move, and then you think when it's the other person's move. Frog has told me before that that's what he does when we cast together, is he will give me a point and then barely listen to what I'm saying, because he wants to make sure that whenever I'm done talking, he has something else good to say for the next point. And obviously he's paying enough attention to, like, understand what I'm saying, but all of the time that I'm talking, he's looking at the map, looking at the items, looking at the builds, looking at the level disparity, looking at gold deficit, all that stuff to figure out what the next point is. How do you feel about where your mental, like, concentration should be when you're a chair 1 when the chair 2 is talking?
I think that what you just said is exactly the way I would, like, if I toss a question to Mifflin, unless I'm really interested in the actual, like, the answer, most of the time afterward, I'm immediately, and this is, as far as chair winning goes, there's maybe a couple places, like, if you're looking for a question, your eyes are on the item box. If you're looking for a point to make, your eyes are up at the top. Or maybe on the ult diamonds or relic timers, right? Like, there's pretty much the only time the center of the screen matters to you when you're casting is if a fight is happening.
Yes.
Otherwise, watching the minimap, like, I think I've been watching the minimap this entire game just out of, like, habit. Like, that's where my eyes are. That's how Smite, like,
right.
That's how I watch Smite now. Because until I see a fight is happening, that's all that matters.
That's how I play Smite too. Like, I cast and play with my minimap as big as possible because I don't need to see that the minions are dying in front of me. You don't need to see that Kairos is farming this harpy right here. You can be looking at, oh, Guan's resetting, everybody's coming back from base. We've got 4 people grouped up with full health bars. They could be moving toward Gold Fury. We're not paying attention to the Susano farming a left wave. You know what I mean?
And it's a good timing, like right now, let's say Helanu's talking. And let's say you asked a question, or maybe he's talking about, like, why that Pyromancer is relevant. And I'm just looking at the items. Any big power spikes that have changed? Have we talked about that Hydra since it got picked up? Maybe that's a big thing for Kairos. Maybe that's the next question. Has he mentioned it? I haven't heard him say the word Hydras, so I think we're good on that point. Now you've got the chin size. Okay, we kind of talked about that earlier, for like pin versus crit. Do we want to go back in on that? Vamana now has the golden blade. Like, there's a few items that have been picked up since the last time anything down there was touched. And so there's a few questions, like, just off the bat there, where you could, if you don't want to talk about anything individually, you could just say, hey, there's still a level difference between Ishane and Kairos. Item-wise, they've got the same number, but the builds are very different. What do you think about the junglers, especially now that we're starting to hit mid-game?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, he just gets to talk again for however long, for whatever he wants to.
Probably
and
a while.
You get to wait until Gold Fury.
You get to spend all that time thinking about what you're going to say when we finally see these people actually play Smite.
I think, because I see you say, Cabbage, that you don't look at builds enough. I think that's something, like, you should not be the one, like, you don't need to break into the builds that often, right? You can say, hey, you know what? Sumik built Phalanx first. How does that feel, especially since he got first blood? And how does that interact with, like, Vamana at large?
Right.
And so you need to know.
Interact with Vamana at large, Gore Meiser? How does the Phalanx work?
You know what? He gets tankier.
Oh, that's crazy, man.
Yeah. And you know what? It looks like a chameleon. That's literally the one point I remember. I said it looks like an angry chameleon. Look at the small icon, dude. Look at the small icon for Phalanx and tell me that it's not an angry reptilian.
I'll give it to you, man. It looks great. I think it looks like an angry chameleon.
That's so fresh in my mind because I was just editing clips together for reels and stuff, and I had that moment when I was talking with Trelly and I said that exact But yeah, I think, like, just being able to, okay, hey, Hydras is done. You might even know the answer. Like, here's the thing. And it comes with a balance. Sometimes, as a 1, you're gonna ask a dumb, obvious question. And people might think you're stupid because of it, but it really doesn't matter, because what you're doing is just making sure that the conversation's still going, that, like, you know what, your 2 was done talking. If he didn't have anything that you immediately wanted to jump back into, it just gives you another place to go. And so find some balance. And sometimes it's like, it's dumb, like, hey, Ishane still has a level lead here. How bad is that for Kairos? Like, yeah, we know it's bad. Let him tell me how bad it is. Right. And it's not, right? In reality, like, you can look at it, oh, he hit 12 10 seconds before the other guy. It's really not that big of a difference. And so, you know, maybe like, the fear, I think there's, like, a fear of disagreeing with the person, and it's not that you cannot disagree with someone as much as it is that how you do it needs to be tasteful. Like, Kaizo could say, like, yeah, you know what, I think that, like, Kairos is the only reason that these guys are winning this game, or, like, still in this game. And I could be like, yeah, you know, Kairos has done a great job. Like, that kill earlier was really important. Unfortunately for him, he's still a little bit behind in experience. Really, right now, I'm looking over towards mid and that Pyromancer. I mean, that was a really, like, good Merlin burn. He's got a level. And what I did was say,
credit my opinion.
No.
Right.
Yeah, what, like, if you strip that to its essence, I said, well, no, but this guy. But at the same time, it was like, hey, you know what? Here's why you said that. Here's like why you're right, but also here's why you're wrong.
Damn, I've heard of yes and before, but I've never heard of no but before. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
My favorite, it doesn't happen too often. A comedic no. There's certain times where it's just really funny to like you ask something and you realize while you're asking it, like maybe it's a genuine question, but then you just get hit with the yeah, no, that's just not.
And there's where the pause makes it right there.
Exactly.
He's 20 gold behind, so I think you're
12 minutes of gameplay, by the way. I talk too much.
You just got a free pyromancer.
That's literally what you're here for,
Gore
Gormizer.
tower, but yeah, I think you take a Noid for your team, just getting the better end of the trades.
Shane going around this Gold Fury here, possibly trying to bait some people in, able to de-ward some of the foothold that Royal Ghosts have, but it is a 4-man grouping over to this Fury. In 4v4, I don't think either team comfortable in pulling it. Lead definitely not big.
And something for inexperienced casters or inexperienced players in the chat, you can tell this is not going to be a full fight over the Gold Fury. Why can you tell that? Because both solo laners have teleport available, and both of them are clearing waves in right. If we see a solo laner in this fight, that means either one of these teams could be doing it, but because they're not here and because they have the option to be here, that's how we know this is just going to be posturing. We're just looking for wards, seeing if somebody's out of position. If somebody shows up, we got to give this a lot more focus and a lot more energy, but because they're not going to be fighting here, this kind of like, oh, you know, they're looking for poke, they're blah, 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 that's good energy for what's going on here.
I also really liked, this is, sorry, not relevant at all to what Kaizo just said.
Good.
The way you said comfortable. I just really like that.
Wait, did I say it weird? Hang on.
No, not you, not you. The way Cabbage says it in the
what do I have
cast.
to
He
do?
just
You
like,
got a free pyromancer. Yeah. A
You said,
little
like,
annoying
comfortable?
Was it?
tower, but
it was comfortable.
yeah, I think you take a Noid for your team, just getting the better end of the trades.
Shane going around this Gold Fury here, possibly trying to bait some people in, able to de-ward some of the foothold that Royal Ghosts have, but it is a 4-man grouping over to this Fury. In 4v4, I don't think either team comfortable in pulling it. Lead definitely not big enough
I don't know why.
for that.
Stood out to me.
Something that's gone maybe unnoticed for the past couple of minutes is just how far ahead Sumik has gotten on this Vamana after that early solo kill.
Yeah, the mana getting
Now we
very
need to start
far ahead.
focusing on the Gold Fury. We
Dep
see Vomit
Lupin
path
has at
across
least
mid.
gotten his
Yeah.
last blue buff. Gold Fury getting picked up here. Jesters are here, but not sure if this is a bait. Looks like Hydra's
Get out of there.
looking for the fight instead. Emoticon Father.
Get out of
This
there.
fight is on though. They do secure it.
You gotta get out of there, Helen.
Kenny gets hit.
If the health bar is going to 50% and nobody's stepping up, but it looks like they could step up, that's your chair one moment waiting to happen. You need to make sure they have the microphone when that's going on.
It wasn't egregious, but it went on like 2 to 3 seconds longer than it really should have.
Yeah.
Like there was a certain point where like I think the first time you said get out of there was right as I was thinking, all right, this needs to wrap up like now. Like you need to like it is not egregious. You can tell like there's not a huge fight that's about to break out. They've just started the Fury. You mentioned they start the Fury. But once you say, oh, they're starting up the Fury, still a little bit of a grouping here from Royal Ghost, though. And that gets you out like right around that 50 mark.
And if you need, that's a good one. The still a bit of a grouping. That's a good way you could get out of there. You can also say blah 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 are here to contest. Blah 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 is in the wings or behind them. Something to call attention to the fact that we've been talking about something else, but now there is a potential for a clash to happen here.
And I'm sure Hindu said it. You said it because he was on last week, right?
Yes.
The most important phrase, and I've used it. I think I used it at least 8 times this last weekend.
Hold that thought.
Hold that thought. It is the most important thing that you will ever have. And like sometimes you'll be saying like, you know, I'm sitting here talking maybe about iShane. Oh, you know, like, oh, he's blah blah blah, so fantastic, whatever. And then hold that thought. Gold Fury has been started up. It doesn't even need to be that fancy.
2 seconds.
Like sometimes, sometimes it's just, hey, I'm gonna say the thing and get the hell out. I'm just gonna hit the eject button, let the other guy have it.
Not sure if this is a bait. Looks like Hydra Sachiman are looking for the fight instead. A Motokan Father.
Darkness Knight is on though. They do secure it. Kill Cam Kenny gets
Yeah, I feel like
back off
not sure if
is
this is a
good.
bait, and then right afterward, like if you're not getting out on that one, then you're getting out when you said Hydra's Hachiman is looking for a fight. Either one of those two is like a good one to just like those were both like really good exit points to have.
Mana getting very far ahead. He said, Movement has
more
at least
time,
gotten
apparently. I
his
didn't
last
think I went this
blue
far
buff.
back.
Gold Fear getting picked up here just as our
Let's see how Cabbage handles this
Not
pickup
sure if this is
after.
a bait. Looks like Hydra Sachiman are looking for the fight instead. A Motokan Father.
Darkness Knight is on though. They do secure it. Kill Cam Kenny gets hit. But the back off is good. And so it's just a clean Gold Fury. As long as they don't stay too long alongside these Oracles, not going to do so. So Hydra's just pull a Gold Fury and walk away.
It's
I like
just
that. That's the
simple
right energy
sometimes,
for that.
you know, just pick it up. You know, Monokan Father does a good job of just throwing out some damage onto the tank.
And there's another good example of just because your other chair was talking for a while doesn't mean you have to talk for a while. Like we just saw an engagement and we're done with that now. It's the chair 2's turn to talk. You just give it right back over to him. Very well done.
And that drop was such a me, like I do that kind of that style of like, well, they get the Gold Fury and walk away.
Yep.
Like,
I think I've heard
damn.
you say those exact words in that exact way before.
Done by
Yeah, I do that a lot.
For the fan club, he said Movement was able to get his last blue buff, but even then he had to split it with his jungler just to get it. A 2-level lead on a Vamana is so scary, especially when he's 2 levels ahead of your ADC.
And we haven't even seen this Vamana really rotate into team fights yet. And then the previous game that we saw, even just a little bit earlier today, this Vamana was able to make such an impact. And so I would not put it past Sumik, a veteran of this game, to really make this pick shine once we start grouping up on the right-hand side of the map. But it doesn't seem like we've done that yet, as both Pyromancers went by relatively smoothly without the solo laners needing to show up.
Good time
So
for a
it's
game
just
recap.
been farming in lane for the time being.
Curious to me that Dep Movement.
Yeah, I'm a
opted
big
for
fan
the
of those,
beads
like-
here. I mean, there are
Just hitting the it kills like we're 15 minutes in, kills still 3-1, 2,500 gold, 3,000 actually in favor of Hydra's Hachiman fan club. The next big objective, you got to imagine the next big fight we see is probably going to be around Pyromancer, right? And then the next guy can tell me, yeah, you're right, like Pyro's going to be a good one to fight over. Honestly, I don't know that either of these teams want to fight that soon. Like maybe they want to hold on, maybe they're waiting for an item. He can talk about whatever he wants, but I'm a big fan of game recaps probably every 4 to 5 minutes, because I feel like a lot can change in 5 minutes of Smite. And 5 minutes into the game, nothing big. Like sometimes there's hey, no first blood 5 minutes in, and that just tells everybody that okay, the first 5 minutes have been a real tame 5 minutes, and then you go to 10 minutes, you give another little update. 15 minutes is a good marker. Alternatively, also just, I don't have anything else to say right now, so I'm just going to, I liked the point you said. You tied it up really well with a bow. I don't have any questions. No items are standing out to me. So, here's the scoreboard.
curious to me that Dep Movement opted for the beads here. I mean, there are a couple ways to disrupt his whole assault, but I don't think he's too worried about that. I really think I would have preferred him see a Sunder or an Ankh, something to help deal with that Vamana. We'll have to see where Kenny goes with his second relic.
I like this.
You realistically need to get a Sunder in that second slot for Kenny, which means they're not going to have any defensive team fight relics. It's just going to be horrific, and whether it's an Ankh or Sunder, both of those are aggressive relics.
Helano, I'm not a betting man, but do you see that third item there for Macaroni?
Oh no.
Oh, I see it.
Here it comes.
I bet you that it's a Hydra's. Ignore how Dr. Dilf
Very
has
happy if it is.
that same tree. I bet you that is a Hydra's. It has to be.
I would be so happy if it is. I don't think it'll
my.
be Typhoon coming out. Royal Ghost Deuce, get
my.
away.
Shane goes down, and now Emoticon Father trying to make his way out. Koja Fox is here trying to get the Discordia out of dodge. Meanwhile, Sumik kills Jolliver in the back line, but it's 2 for 1 in the face.
Would be so.
I bet you that is a Hydrus. It
That's
has
tough.
to be.
That's tough because I do like that bit where you're like making the callback to something you were talking about earlier in the cast. It's just very unfortunate that it was timed right as pretty much the first major fight we've seen this whole game is taking place on right. I think that if you want to bring that up, I think that's for sure a good talking point and it gives you something to entertain the audience with. But I do think that we need to be watching the map over here because I think that this grouping of players around Pyromancer should be telling you that maybe this isn't the time to be bringing that up. Thoughts?
I also there's a moment where you left it a little more open. I think you could still, because like once you started it going in, I think it's more than fine to be in. It's just when you finished like the joke, it was in this. There was a pause.
Yeah.
And that pause led to your two talking, and suddenly they have the start of the fight. Whereas if you're, watching the mini map, which again always should be,
Yes.
you say like, oh, I bet that's gonna be a Hydras, but now Pyromancer started up, and you immediately just get to jump into the fight yourself, right? And like and maybe you don't get the reaction out of the joke that you would have liked, but sometimes it's, I think, more important to be there for the fight.
Right. Although I will say, Gore, and I'm curious what your take is on this because you've obviously worked with them a lot more than I have. In this moment, if I'm thinking about a way to keep this energy, I hear Dolson, like, talking about blah, 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 Hydra's Hachiman, blah, 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 and then I hear, like, oh my god, we've got a fight over here, and then, like, carrying that energy into the fight and then tapering it into more serious talk as opposed to, like, we're haha funny and then we're very serious talking about the fight.
Yeah, Dave's like his like you said, like, oh wow, we've got the Pyromancer, like, start it up, like he's like the surprise essence of it, which is, again, it's a great way to not only reset yourself, but it resets audience expectations, because anybody else who also wasn't watching the mini map and was watching maybe like down at the item box where you were talking about, or just what was on screen, all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, yeah, there is a Pyromancer, huh?
This guy's onto something here.
And so, like, it gets that I'm gonna steal the word Cabbage used. It gets awareness for everybody onto the same spot to be looking at it.
I don't think it'll be Typhoon coming out. Royal Ghost Deuce, get away.
Shane goes
this is
down,
just
and now Emoticon Father
like
trying to make his way out.
At the same time, that's always latency.
Get the Discordia out of dodge. Meanwhile, Sumik kills Jolliver in the back line, but it's 2 for 1 in the favor of Royal Ghosts. The ultimate in here is not enough to secure that kill onto Kairos, able to get out relatively scot-free, and it is a dominance. I have been I've been shamed by the production.
Shamed
me. Oh, dang. It's got to be the next time. It has to be. Next item, Hydras. I'm calling it.
Surely he goes Transcendence Hydras. Surely. He's
Transcendence Hydras. Please do it for me.
Just for us. We know you can't hear us, but it would make our day.
Something to note, we did see the previous Baka build being into the crit, noticing that Elshane this time going to be going for that Odysseus bow and kin size instead. So opting for more shred and more jungle clear, as well as just that sheer AoE damage you get from Golden Blade Odie bow.
Yeah.
So in the future, do exactly what you just did, but make it a question.
Tell me how we can do that.
Yeah, it was just I heard a bunch of item names, and I heard that it was like, usually we see the crit, or last time we saw the crit, this is what we're seeing this time. Hit the, what's it called? Like, hit them with which do you like more? Do you feel like this is good for this game? Like, sometimes you just ask a question.
like to be able to get a shell versus a buck of a mana, but with beads on the Guan Yu, and I mean you have to get a Sunder, surely, right? Into Vamana, you just have to. Like that character does not die without Sunder. We saw
Kenny
it last
just
game.
backed, and it is a shell.
Okay, so I guess just putting a lot of faith into the amount of burn that Merlin does. I mean, Merlin is the premier.
People sleep on
a
how
lot of
good
teams
upgraded
prioritize
Horrific
into
is
the
against
Vamana.
Vomit.
Feels
That shit
like
makes
one
it
of the
so he
characters
doesn't
that
do
can actually
anything.
deal
Yeah,
with that.
because look, I'm a big fan of upgraded Horrific. Period. I also think like I agree with the Sunder point. Shell is also really good against auto attackers, though, right?
Yes.
Like that's like if you've got Horrific Shell, you're not dealing with the shielding that he has, but you're dealing with attack speed and autos in general. But that's I think like I don't know. That's not the point that was trying to be made
Right.
there, right? Like so, I think that's something like you could probably go into and be like, oh, you know what? They didn't get the Sunder. And like I think make the joke about okay, like that maybe not the best idea, but then highlight why the relics he has could still be good, just to do due diligence.
Sure. And that is kind of, I don't know if I can't remember if we were talking about this before or after we went on air, but that's the whole like confidence thing. It doesn't matter if what you say is correct or incorrect. If you pose it in a way that you're saying Sunder is you need it against Vomit, you better stick to you need Sunder against Vomit. Like I think that you should 100% keep preaching that narrative, whether it's right or wrong, because you don't want to double back and sound unsure of yourself. You didn't do that here, but just for future reference. And just because Cabbage is talking about it, the reason Horrific is so good, and so good specifically against Vomit, crowd control immunity like beads will cleanse you of the movement speed slow, but will not cleanse the attack speed slow, and will not cleanse the damage reduction. So even if you go into Vominal, you are still taking, or you're still dealing reduced damage at a reduced auto attack speed.
Yeah.
That character
Damn,
does
I
not
love
die
Horrific.
without Sunder. We
It's
saw
so
it
sick.
last
Just
game.
backed,
I've been building it
and it is
constantly.
a shell.
Okay, so I guess just putting a lot of faith into the amount of burn that Merlin does. I mean, Merlin is the premier mage that a lot of teams prioritize into the Vamana.
wow.
It feels like one of the characters that can actually deal with that ultimate. But the gold tier getting pulled here, Royal Ghost have the Oracle Vision. They know this is happening, but are they
Yeah,
going to
but
get in range in time?
Yeah, they know what's happening. Can they do anything about it? Sumik, this level
Much better
18 Vamana,
Mhm.
zoning the entire pit off by himself, and Hydra's Hachiman fan club able to secure that Fury. Simple as heading into the mid lane, they dive on a Jolliver. Going under tower in the mid lane as well as Macaroni in left lane gets low. Koja Fox rotates over, fight under the T1. Jolliver gets low, but Emoticon Father loses.
That feels bad because your production was kind of slow to like jump on that, but I love that you are talking about the more important thing, which is this grouping in the mid lane. Like that
Yeah.
is for sure you looking at the map and making the right call there.
And sometimes you're just gonna have to do that, right? Like if the camera's somewhere else, but you see something big's happening, go talk about the big thing every time.
And then hope that they transition over. I do like that you at least make mention of what the camera's looking at so that people in chat who aren't paying super close attention see that you're clearly paying attention to the game, but your attention's obviously over here in this grouping, which is right where it needs to be.
Low, but Emoticon Father loses his life, so does Sumik. And that's a huge shutdown out of the mana. 3 kills in a row. Elshane goes down and probably going to lose this T2 in mid as well. A bit of a split call here. The Kaiser's Hachiman fan club and the Royal Ghosts pull ahead in the kills and the gold and continue to push things down.
Also,
Pyros
at this
single-handedly
pump up the energy, right? I think like just more higher excitement levels. I will say there's always an asterisk on this because whenever you're working at home, right? There's a lot of external factors that go into how loud you can be
Sure.
and what you're doing. But I think some more at this point more energy. Like that was a really big team fight, and I think the call itself, like the words, the verbiage, and the pace of what you said was good.
Agreed.
But jump up a little more for parts of it just to have a little extra energy in there. Get more attention on the team fight to emphasize maybe how big and important it is. And then you could bring it back down after, like, They kill Shane, they're going for a tier 1. You pretty much got what you need.
When the Royal Ghosts pull ahead in the kills and the gold and continue to push things down.
Kairos
Your mic was speaking all day, that's rough.
Royal Ghost in this game, 4-1 and 2. Could potentially see a Fire Giant here too. Dilf isn't going to rotate. I feel like I would have liked to see Royal Ghost trying to do a Fire Giant there. They still had, even after getting that T2, still had 10 seconds. Blink in from Kairos isn't going to find anything. I mean, they do get 2 towers, which, don't get me wrong, is, you know, it's a lot of gold back in their pockets. You do see for the first time this game a small lead for the Royal Ghost, but I feel like they could have pushed that a little bit farther and gone for a Fire Giant there.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Whenever you have Sumik on the field, you have to be very careful pulling an objective. That big baby able to just get in the back line, disrupt things. Right now, with everyone respawning and with objectives down, we're probably going to go back to a pace of farming, although Pyromancer, forgive me, spawning relatively shortly. As the production's pointing out these graphs, what a shift that was. One fight is all it takes to completely swing things into the experience favor of Royal Ghosts. Gold basically a negligible lead at this point. But still, evening things up from where they were. Definitely something that the Royal Ghosts are extraordinarily happy about. I did want to point out...
big XP lead. I mean, when you look at it, it's a level in jungle, it's 2 levels in mid, it's 2 levels in support.
Oh wow, yeah.
You are down a level in ADC and solo, but it's still, it's Hydra's Hachiman fan club that are being the aggressors here, pulling this Pyromancer. Sumik is making so much space again.
Yeah, this Vamana going big mode in the backline. Elshay needs to be careful. Does end up dying to Kairos here. Sumik trying to turn things back around. Does get the kill onto Kairos. Now Jolliver's the target, but Sumik is caught and killed. That the movement gets credited for the kill as Jolliver goes down to Koja Fox. And so it is just a 2-for-2 trade. Don't know if any team is particularly favored there, but again, putting the hurt onto Sumik here is important. Maybe this mid T1 shifts things into the favor. Kairos not
and solo, but it's still, it's Hydra's Hachiman fan club that are being the aggressors here, pulling this Pyromancer. Sumik is making so much space again.
Yeah, this Vamana going big mode in the backline. Elshay needs to be careful. Does end up dying to Kairos here. Sumik trying to turn things back around. Does get the kill onto Kairos. Now Jolliver's the target, but Sumik is caught and killed. That the movement gets credited for the kill as Jolliver goes down to Koja Fox. And so it is just a 2-for-2 trade. Don't know if any team is particularly favored there, but again, putting the hurt onto Sumik here is important. Maybe this mid T1 shifts things into the favor.
So I'm trying to look at, and this is not my specialty, so I for sure need your insight here on the specific words used and like the narrative discussed during the team fight from Cabbage here, because watching it the first time, I heard a lot of reading character kills player as opposed to like what's actually happening in the fight, like Vomit ult being, or like Susano ult coming through, Merlin Void combo, blah blah blah. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. I'll play it one more time. I want to know what your thoughts are on specifically what Cabbage says during this team fight.
You are down a level in ADC and solo, but it's still, it's Hydra's Hachiman fan club that are being the aggressors here, pulling this Pyromancer. Sumik is making so much space again.
Yeah, this Vamana going big mode in the backline. Elshay needs to be careful. Does end up dying to Kairos here. Sumik trying to turn things back around. Does get the kill onto Kairos. Now Jolliver's
it's that second one that I think really hits it.
And killed. That the movement gets credited for the kill as Jolliver goes down to Koja Fox. And so it is just a 2-for-2.
Like the first one I like, and then Sumik blah 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 in the backline I really like, but then after that I feel like we spent too much time talking about like reading what's going on in the kill feed, and that's kind of like that's a good crutch for a tier 1 if you are losing track of the team fight, but in my opinion I feel like you want to talk about big picture things as opposed to the specific detail of who gets credit for what kill.
Yeah, I agree with that. right? Because I think it's what's it called? Shane dies, and I can't remember the exact phrasing, but I know you do like does blank, and then immediately when Sumi gets his kill, it's another does, which I think that stuttered you in a weird way, where now you're stacked in a way that you're not entirely sure. So like he gets the drop of like Sumik's creating so much space, and you're like, right, Vamana, big mode in the back line, like getting aggressive, and like you highlight that Shane dies. But at that point, you could talk about like, instead of going in with the kills, be like, oh, Shane does end up dying here, but it's still space, it's still aggression right now for the Hydra's Hachi fan club. Like, they're gonna keep pushing, go for the tier 1, and getting aggressive with Sumik, a little bit too much there. Goes down, the same thing can be said, it's 2 for 1, no 2 for 2, because I can do math, haha. And, you know, you can highlight it more as, like, what is the team doing, not what is, like, what kills are happening. Does it matter? Like, at the end, yes, it probably does matter, like, Kairos dies, that's a huge deal, but you don't have to, unless it's like massive shutdown. If you don't mention it, your 2 will get it. He'll like be able to say, you know, yeah, like Kairos, he was 4-1, like dying there's like such a big mistake. Stuff like that, but you can kind of frame it then instead, you know, like Kaizo was saying, like, instead of blank gets this kill, blank gets this kill, blank gets this kill, blank gets this kill, you get more like, it's almost the opposite. We had to tell J-Mac to stop trying to say as many ability names because he kept saying every ability name. And if you're trying to say everything that happens, you're not gonna be able to keep up. There were 4 abilities on screen at once just now. Like, you're never gonna be able to say all of them at once. And if you're just reading the kills, it gets very monotonous. So being able to, you know, like, zoom in when it needs to, right? If all of those kills are getting picked up by Macaroni, then you can read kill feed. Yes, because that guy's about to get a triple kill.
Yep.
But if it's actually, I would argue, unfortunate that every kill seems to go to 6 different people in this fight right here. Right. Because otherwise, you know, like, Macaroni goes in, he finds one, keeps getting the shots, gets a second. Like, you can just keep hammering the fact that he's getting kills because that's the hype thing that's happening.
Right.
But
you can build your way up to a pentakill eventually doing that.
And in this one, the kills aren't the thing that's hype. The thing that's hype is the team getting the pressure and knocking down a tier 1 because of that pressure.
And Anthony brings up a good point from our last week's session with Hindu Man, and I'm curious if this is something that he only said to us, the amateur casters, or if you've heard this as well. He talked about treating the team fight like it's a ball game sport, where it's like soccer. You have to tell the audience with your voice where the ball is and what the ball is doing, where it's going, who has the ball, what is the impact of that, and following that as a way to track the narrative of the fight, so that you don't get lost trying to do too many things all at once.
I will say, I've never heard him say that, but that is a great point. Like that, I mean, because that is like legitimately, like, think about football. If you're watching football, American football, for any Europeans that are going to yell at me, do you care what the O-line is doing if it is anything other than, like, if there's a blitz and someone gets through, then it might be important to mention those guys. But 99% of the time aren't really a big deal, because what matters is the quarterback has the ball, what's the play he's making, where's the ball going? And that's exactly what you said, right? Like, that's what you have to illustrate. And, you know, one thing, like, Hindu has said this several times to me, at least. I don't know how often it's come up lately, but, like, also remember the people, like, there are some people who are watching, some people who have it on their second monitor, some people who don't have the stream visuals on and are just listening. And then, of course, there's the other subset of people who are not listening but are watching, and those guys are, who cares about them? They can't hear you.
Yeah, suck.
Yeah. The people who can't see the screen, you don't have to tell them exactly what happens. You know, your tier 2 can recap the fight and should be able to break it down. But, like, being able to make it a big picture thing of, like, Hydra's Hachiman fan club is getting aggressive, going under the tier 2. They get a couple of kills, lose a couple players, but they still get the tower. Because you told them everything that happened. Right. There were kills, they lost some people, and they got the tower. That's everything that was important. Your tier 2 can tell you who and what and how. You got the emphatic points of like, oh hey, a big play was made. Also, the voice when you're trying to figure out is Dulcin. That's a good thing to have. Like,
I don't think anybody's complaining about that.
I think earlier you said that you said Frankenstein caster.
Yes.
And like I think that there's a lot like that's kind of half of commentary. Like I will have tendencies to do things that Dave does because I cast with him all the time. Or you can tell I think you can tell if I've been watching a sport recently because my commentary will reflect more of what I've been listening to.
Right.
And so it's kind of like what it is. Like you'll have your own style, but it will be influenced, right? And if it's as long as the influences are good, it's fine.
I honestly think that's a great idea too, like you said, for learning to cast better in general as opposed to a specific game. I tell people a lot to just find somebody you like and find out what you like about them and try to emulate that. I do that I've been studying a lot of the VODs that we have of aggro casting with Finch, and I am in love with Ryan Aggro Bailey. I would love to hug him in person the next time I see him, but I love his style and everything about his confidence, so I try to emulate that in my casts. And
my favorite thing is just because of aggro, my favorite thing he does, and something that I've never been able to emulate the way, he will always describe it. Every time he is starting a point, he's building breakaway points. Yes. So that if something happens, he can wrap up.
Yes.
It's just the way, and I told him this because he does it with design too. I've told him the way that he casts and the way that he looks at Smite is just so different from how I look at it that it's just so cool to talk about. It's the same thing I was telling you before we started. I love commentary and talking to aggro because he had a degree in it and worked professionally before high res as well. It's just really cool being able to see what kind of things that you do differently, but it's still a good job. That's where the subjective thing comes in, right? I don't build my segments the same way he does. And I have more natural pauses in my speech for when I'm quick thinking, things like that. But my casts, at least lately, aren't bad. And his casts are great, right? So you get you got to build in caveats, little asterisks.
Sure.
Lately, they've been pretty all right.
Maybe this
Lately, I haven't hated them.
Of Hydra's Hachiman fan club a little bit.
Yeah, trying to slow down this Vamana a little bit did.
Oh, but to finish the point we were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Use your voice as the ball is what Hindu was telling us. You should be able to tell people what to look at, and that should rarely be the kill feed. If one player's getting all of the kills, like Gore said, then it's okay for the ball to be the kill feed, but otherwise it should be Sumek, who is the focus of this fight. He's Vamana ulting, he's diving the tower, and then you shift the attention to X player or X next thing on the map, but track something with your voice so that the audience knows what to be looking at. If you're only reading the kill feed, that's not directing the audience's attention anywhere other than the top of the screen, and that's not what you want them to be looking at.
A little bit did get another kill onto him there. Kairos falling down there can't feel great. I think he had a fairly good size shutdown on him at the time. Didn't catch exactly who that kill went to, but still looking at items, it is the Charon's coin that we talked a little bit about in that first set. A controversial item to say the least. Some people think it's great, some people don't like it at all. I think the passive's okay. It does give
the one
you
where you
HP.
get gold every time you flip the coin. I think that one's pretty good.
It's a big 8 gold, man.
Oh yeah.
Gotta be OP.
Oh my god!
Hachiman's a fun character. Anyways, Dr. Dilf trying to set up an ambush.
I forgot this dude's name was Dr. Dilf.
And is stent packing likely going to lose his tower as a result.
Just hit you a
Hey,
second time.
Walks into vision of Macaroni, ends up taking a lot of damage
Okay,
here.
hang on,
Speaking of
because
damage,
I was gonna ignore this because I thought that it was gonna like pass up pretty quickly, but there was like this whole 20-second segment, you guys are talking at the same time as each other a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. It does
the
give
one
you
where you
HP.
get gold every time you flip the coin, I think that one's
Yeah.
pretty good.
It's a big 8 gold, man.
Oh yeah.
Gotta be OP. Optimon's a fun character. Anyways, Dr. Dilf trying to set up an ambush, eats a couple eagle eye shots for 3/4 of his HP and is sent packing, likely going to lose his tower as a result. Hey,
Now walks into vision of Macaroni, ends up taking a lot of damage here. Speaking of damage being dealt, Jolliver takes so much from the golden apple, and Sumik sees this as his time to go. Trying to get the chase down. Is the flicker going to be enough? The CC immunity is enough to get through the slow, and the Aegis is not enough to save Jolliver's life. Walking out now, trying to rejoin the rest of his team. Detmuffen tried to get something started now, going in to the backline here on top of the opponent, going to back up instead. Sees Elshane rotating over, beats Aegis, forced out of Dr. Dilf, who dashes away. Huge
Ooh!
Typhoon from Kairos, but Kairos loses his life for it as Macaroni gets the kill there. And 4v3, seems both teams going to back off. Hydra's going to head over towards what seems to be the Gold Fury as their prize for this. To be careful, the Royal Ghosts seem like they're willing to show face here.
No one felt better.
Yeah, that felt really good, actually. I always find it interesting that anytime I'm listening to a Chair 1 cast, whether it's while I'm casting or just doing these VOD reviews, it's like ingrained into my psyche to add some kind of vocal pop-off anytime something interesting happens. I can't stop myself from doing it anymore.
Macaroni going to life steal off that green buff, going to feel a little bit better here. They don't want to get this go. Dilf is here, full HP, might be doing enough. That oboe is
You
spreading
gotta
the
let your
damage.
Chair 1 take
Hachiman Fan
this.
Club is going to pick up the Gold Fury, and now Dilf might be in danger himself. Sumik again is on his way. The Horizontal is going to cut him off as well, and Dilf is going to take a spill here.
Yes,
now
no?
a dagger to death before this Fire Giant could be problematic here for the Royal Ghost.
Yeah, Sumik.
Yeah, that was a lot of wanting.
Yeah. Because, like, some of it is fine. It's never, you only do Chair 1, you only do Chair 2. There is a lot of interaction between the two, and situations where it's just not lined up perfectly for you, so you have to lead into the other guy doing a little bit of 1, a little bit of 2, but there are points in here where you can very easily drop it off to the Chair 1, I feel like.
Here, they don't want to get this go. Dilf is here, full HP, might be doing enough. That oboe is spreading the damage. Hachiman Fan Club is going to pick up the Gold Fury, and now Dilf might be in danger himself. Sumik again is on his way. The Horizontal is going to cut him off as well, and Dilf is going to take a spill here. Now a dagger to death before this Fire Giant could be problematic here for the Royal Ghost.
Yeah, it just makes it, because this is where it gets awkward, right? Like,
Yes.
it's
Now, what does
not
the
just
Chair
the
1
fight.
say?
It's what does he talk about? Like, you literally, like, as the two just said, yep, they're going to be setting up for Fire Giant. And that's not, Cabbage shouldn't be the one setting up for Fire Giant. Like, he'd be like, oh yeah, so what, like, I mean, at that point, if I'm wanting and that happens, I'm pretty much going to hit you with, oh, and what should they do to set up for it? Like, I'm not supposed to break things down. I'm gonna I'm gonna make you do it. I'm gonna send it back over to you.
Attic here for the Royal Ghost.
Yeah, Sumik teleports in there, and that's able to completely turn the end.
Being too timid, I wouldn't beat yourself up too much, Cabbage, because at the end of the day, it is realistically Halanu that needs to be dropping that. There are opportunities for him to do so, and he either chose not to or didn't think to. I wouldn't, like, kick yourself in the pants over the way that went, because at the end of the day, it is somebody else that should stop talking to let you talk, as opposed to you constantly having to take the mic away from them.
Yeah, odds are, if you're having to rip, that means someone's not doing their job properly.
Or something went wrong. But I think in this case, it is Halanu
and, like,
needs to,
There's also you're online, so there's, like, certain moments where, like, there's no way to... There's a certain point where there's no way to truly, like, signify, hey, I'm gonna take this.
Yeah.
or like have a gimme like, hey, yeah, my turn, or anything like that. Like it's just kind of sometimes you got to deal with it. It happens with bad teams a lot too, all the time, because those dudes aren't playing Smite. They're playing Arena with some objectives nearby.
With some towers that they don't know what they do.
I almost feel mean saying this because it feels like I can't think of the word for it. My brain wanted to say like classist, but that's definitely not it.
I'm curious where this is going because you're like the least mean person I've ever met.
Yeah, well, it's just the when you watch bad Smite, it is just fundamentally different, and it is harder to cast because they don't know they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not grouping and sometimes it's you don't know what they're doing because you say, okay, this is how the game should flow. They just got 3 kills, which means we should be going to the Fire Giant now. And then they run elitist. That's exactly what it is. Then they like run down mid and in their brains out. And like, how are you supposed to break that down? They just made a dumb play.
Right.
And then sometimes the team fights are even harder because in a structured SBL team fight, I can tell you what's happening pretty cleanly because they know what they're trying to accomplish. Sure. They have a target in mind. They have like a goal that they're trying to execute. And most of the time it's pretty easy to follow because the players are doing something straightforward. If it goes wrong, they try to get out. And if they overstay, then it's usually relatively obvious to everybody watching that, oh, they probably should have got out a little earlier. When you have bad Smite, sometimes they just fight to fight, and like that's fun, but they aren't accomplishing anything. And then on top of that, like it's harder to predict because, hey, this guy just used his ult for no reason, and now like I know he's not going to get punished for using it for no reason because the other team is doing the same damn thing. Like,
sure.
It's harder to predict, so it's harder to do the team fights because it doesn't flow the way that your brain thinks it should flow immediately. So in a way, it's like a hyperbolic time chamber if you're casting it, because you get good at casting bad Smite, and then you see something great, and you're like, oh my god, everything makes sense. Wow, it all lined up.
I had something.
He hit his stun, and his team followed up on it. Holy.
I had something like that happen when I was casting with Frog recently, where 2 people were contesting oracles like 12 minutes into the game in a 1-to-1 game, and Maui just ults 2 full health players without anybody near him, and then they team fight over that for some reason, and my handoff back to Frog was very shaky because I didn't anticipate any of that, and I felt really bad about it. And then I thought back on it, and I was like, that's not even the correct play there. So I don't hate that I didn't anticipate that, because I shouldn't have been anticipating that. Yes, you were production on that, Cabbage. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Sometimes it's just weird, man. And it doesn't stop. Like, it happens all the time. Like, even in SPL, there will be moments where you're just scratching your head for a little bit and just trying to, like, I don't know what they were going for. But as long as if you're the 2, you can, like, sometimes you can just say that. Especially, like, if it's a genuinely perplexing moment, I think you can say that. If you're a 1, most of the time, if you're confused, you can, like, just, your 2 is either confused with you, or they can explain it to you. And so just whatever you need to be able to say to get out of there.
Horizontal is going to cut him off as well, and Dilf is going to...
And more generic stuff that's not at all related to the cast that we're talking about right now or what's going on the screen. Don't forget, Chair 2s, you are explaining the game to the average Smite player who is level 40 and probably in high silver, low gold. So your explanation, your analysis doesn't always have to be crazy deep. Like, you can explain some very basic things. Like, if you're going to say Thanatos is a very early game character, don't be afraid to add because these reasons. Because Death Scythe is such a hard-hitting ability. It does percent HP damage. It heals him. The HP swing is very big. Stuff like that. Don't be afraid to lean into some of the more surface-level stuff, because there's somebody in chat that didn't know that and gains benefit from you explaining that. And it gives you time to fill the air. You don't have to think about anything else to say during that time. And it makes you sound smarter than you already are.
I'm also just a big fan of explaining your points.
It seemed that the Royal Ghosts were very reliant on Jolliver to put in the damage on this Vamana. Vamana did grab that Heartward in that third item slot, and it seemed like Sumik really knows where his bread is buttered, knows that he needs to focus out Jolliver, ends up getting the kill very early there, and that sets up their team for the Gold Fury. They get a kill off of that, and now Fire Giant being pulled. And Helena, I don't think Royal Ghosts are able to respond.
No, they're nowhere close. A bit surprising there that Royal Ghosts don't even want to show face. It is a regular Fire Giant, your ADC was down, but now this gold lead's just going to balloon here. I mean, you're sitting at 6,000 right now, which is, you know, a lot, but not impossible. But if all those twos go down, it's going to add another, you know, 4,500 gold.
Also, something that might help you find stuff to talk about, Cabbage, stop reading chat when you're trying to cast. I see you typing in chat during your own broadcast here on the right side.
Oh yeah, never. Hey, that never.
Hey, that whole chat reading thing, don't do that.
Like, the only reason in the last few weeks I've even had Twitch chat in my mind has been because of the fact that we put it on monitors in the studio. Like, otherwise, I genuinely, like, unless we're showing a video that I want to see people's reactions to, wouldn't look at it. The way, you know, we'll look at it, and, like, obviously it's going to be different. There's going to be some feedback that, like, Twitch might have that is helpful. Most of their chat, like, most of the things they say is gonna be nothing.
Yeah.
The only time it's gonna be really helpful is if everybody is saying generally the same thing, then that means that it's happening enough that it's, like, noticed by everybody. But if you're reading chat, you will definitely not be paying enough attention to your caster or the game.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone, like, I've had some big ADHD moments, and I used to, like, I would open chat to have something else, like, have, like, more, I guess, things firing off.
Like a fidget spinner?
Yeah, then, I actually, for a while, I think it's in a box back there, but I have stuff on my desk that I'll play with, specifically to, like, keep my hands busy so I don't look at anything else.
Yeah, you should check under your computer science degree, it might be there.
Yeah, honestly.
To use the Typhoon there defensively, gets absolutely nothing for his troubles, and the split push seems to be the call. Hydras, though, needs to be careful in the mid lane. They're going to get this right T2 in seconds. It's onto Epona. Sumik sees this as his job to disperse the backline, gets 3 people separated, and right now it is a complete split. Only 2 people chasing down the other 2, and, well, Elshane just going to take that right-hand Phoenix. Hydras Hachiman fan club needs to stay alive. It seems like Emoticon Father is low, though, and he gets taken down by Kairos. The ult's away, attempted by Koja Fox, not going to be able to do it. And so now it teleports here back to base, trying to defend this mid Phoenix. Royal Ghosts want to get some sort of consolation prize after getting those 2 kills. But it's going to be very difficult here. Sumik does not have access to the ultimate, but Elshane with that regurgitate, very important, and Macaroni on the mounted archery can use it for safety or for some extra damage. We've seen how much damage this Hachiman can do. Up onto Epona, goes Deathmoof, and Macaroni's being burned through. Doesn't need to use the ultimate, though, able to get out, but it looks like that mid-Phoenix is going to go down, along with Elshane losing his life. And Royal Ghost contemplating what they want to do here, end up backing off, not going to risk the end. To use the ultimate,
so
does not have
here's
access.
something
that
this is very dependent on how experienced your co-caster is, and specifically how experienced you are with them. You ideally, as a 1, want to get some kind of time to your chair 2 at this point, so that you can take a breath, you can have all the breath and energy you need to address whatever this Phoenix Siege is going to be, because this could be the end of the game here if things don't go well, so you want to be well prepared for that. If you trust your 2, you could give them a couple of sentences here. Like, if Frog passes this over to me here, I'm saying something to the effect of, they're grouping up, they're maybe waiting on the wave here, Terra healing will top them up a bit, but it looks like they're about to go in. And then the chair 1 can keep talking. You don't want to have to talk for 30, 45 seconds, a minute straight, if you can avoid it. But if you're either afraid that they're going to go in and you aren't going to be ready for it, or your chair 2 isn't experienced with that, you don't have that kind of comfort with them, you don't have that confidence in them, then you can hold this here. But I do think the top end of, if you're trying to improve, would be to ideally pitch this over to the 2, at least for a sentence or 2.
I also will say, though, considering you didn't pitch it over, you'd kept the pace, I think, really good throughout that. Like, you probably could have slowed down the speed with which you were speaking while they are waiting. Like, right here, you don't need to be talking really fast. It doesn't have to be going like this. You need to be like, okay, Hachi has the ultimate. A lot of damage that can come through on that one. Beads Aegis still available. And there's going to be the engage from Royal Ghost. Like, you can give yourself those built-in moments where, if you don't trust, or sometimes maybe just don't want to drop, maybe you think, like, hey, the fight's going to break out. If I drop, even if they get a sentence in, is that going to be enough? No, let's just hold it. I think, like, just making sure your pacing in those moments is good enough to make sure that you're not bleeding yourself dry and losing it. Because if it does end there and you're going fast the entire time, there's two things that are now happening. You're up here, and for the end call, you've got to go up even higher. And also, you've been here for like 30 seconds, and then you have to go even higher without having that break. So, being able to go up, this is the fight, come back down. If you're going to hold it, you hold it, and then spike back up when the fight re-engages. Just to balance it out.
Some sort of consolation prize after getting those 2 kills. But it's going to be very difficult here. Sumik does not have access to the ultimate, but Elshane with that regurgitate, very important, and Macaroni on the mounted archery can use it for safety or for some extra damage. We've seen how much damage this Hachiman can do. Up onto Epona, goes Deathmuffin, and Macaroni's being burned through. Doesn't need to use the ultimate though, able to get out, but it looks like that mid-Phoenix is going to go down, along with Elshane losing his life. And Royal Ghost contemplating what they want to do here, end up backing off, not going to risk the end.
Few too many towers up, unfortunately, for the side of Royal Ghost. A T1 and 2 T2s left. Think if those towers aren't standing, you might have thought about going for that end. You also don't know exactly when that big baby ultimate is coming back up. Would have been close whether they had the time to end there. I think they make the smart call. Don't think they're able to just straight end there. Do you see the starter items sold for Demon Blade, as our lovely production points out? Just that one crit item, but with the amount, full attack speed with the Hydras, if that crit connects, especially on an Eagle Eye, it will hurt.
I think the other thing that production is trying to point out is there is no Hydras.
There is no Hydras. We have been trolled.
I have been trolled. We have all been trolled. I was promised something that I did not receive. Hydras Hachiman Fan Club win this. I will be very, very disappointed in them. Anyways, the Primal Fury going to go the way of Hydras Hachiman Fan Club, and then likely going to rotate over to this Fire Giant if they do choose to pull it. This is going to be a great help in burning that objective. But with that mid-Phoenix being down,
yeah,
really evens things up in terms of map state.
I think up until this moment. Okay, there we go.
Yep.
Really
I was definitely starting to lose it for a second.
For Macaroni over Dr. Dilf, and then Sumik having an entire item up
name's
over
Dr.
Deathmuffin.
Dilf, bro.
So with that item being Hastened Katana, that is a little bit scary.
I'm gonna DM him after we're done and tell him how much he loves
The
him.
Merlin now officially cannot run away.
Oh no,
Sumik might be caught out here. The damage is good. Do they have enough to burn through the ultimate? They do drop Darkest of Nights and Typhoon, but they get the pick onto the Soul Laner. A big kill here for Royal Ghost. Sumik shouldn't respawn in time for this Fire Giant, as it's blinking now.
How do you feel about that? Because I think that's one of the times I do want the 2 to hang on to.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I'm happy he did. The minute afterward, I was actually, I'm really curious, because what I want is for him to hold on to it. It's okay that you throw out the abilities, you want it a little bit, but then I want every reason that's terrible for Hydra's Hachiman Fan Club. You know what I mean? Like, I want a list of reasons until Fire Giant's being pulled, and until you need to drop it again, to just know, like, now you don't have Sumik. That's one of your big ults. Like, he's one of your divers. You need something massive to try and offset the fact that you don't have his presence, and to fight, I mean, you're at a numbers disadvantage. we'll see what they can do. And then that we'll see what they can do is okay, somebody's fighting now.
And don't forget that, because we've been talking a lot the last 2 weeks about narrative building for Chair 1s, and I guess for Chair 2s in this moment, because that's been a very core piece of all of these fights. Like you said, you should be pointing out the fact that that's a huge piece missing from Hydra's Hachiman fan club. All of these fights have been Sumik diving the backline, creating so much space, zoning 3 players by himself. Now you don't have that Vomit available for this next fight. That's a big deal. You should make sure you're pointing that out, especially considering both your Chair 1 and your Chair 2 have spent a lot of this game talking about Sumik and how important the big baby is, how scary it is that he's 2 levels up. Now that he's gone, we need to draw attention to the fact that this is a big deal.
I also want to give a shout out to Kairos, because I think without him, his team literally is not even in this anymore. It is so wild to me that there's a jungler that's 9-3 and a jungler that's 0-6, and the 0-6 is on the team that's 4,000 gold ahead. That's so wild.
Spotted out by Kairos, so the flank not really going to work. Instead, chooses to take the 1v1. Kairos taking a lot of damage, but it forces out the beads, and that's all it will force out. But it seems like the fight around the Fire Giant has started. Just the burn, and both teams going to end up backing away here. I don't know how much I like this from Royal Ghost. It feels like they need to put their foot on the gas while Sumik is respawning, because that teleport is going to be up. He's going to be able to teleport right in roughly 11 seconds. And here they go, burning this Fire Giant down. Keeping Hydra's Hachiman fan for the day.
Low
border
here, the
held.
Eagle Eye. Looks like they're gonna coin flip this here.
I
Hydra's
hate
Hachiman
that.
the Fire Giant away. Disaster.
Wow,
Now
it is. I will say it is a good thing that you're here for this week, because we had something similar happen last week, and Hindu let him have it, man. Like, that is. You as a 2, you should never be ripping the mic away from the 1 when something interesting is going on.
Yeah, no, I'm actually trying to. This one's so wrong that it's hard to put into words. That was bad. Like the first phrase I thought of when I heard that is, if I'm watching this, I might legitimately close the broadcast. And I think that's because I'm a caster, right? And so I hear that and I'm like, ooh, right. I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to commit time to this.
We know more what it should sound like.
Yeah, and the thing is you could probably get hype, but if you want to get hype, stop Chair 2-ing. Well, not even stop Chair 2-ing. There's ways to hype while you're Chair 2. But if you're the one here, depending on what happens, right? Because like I see there's some latency and pausing a bit for tension, whatever. If the 2 teams are lined up at the Fire Giant, I think that, Cabbage is making great points. Like, he's talking about the fact that, hey, they're not going right now. They should be going. Teleports up 11 seconds until Sumik's back. Like, you're framing it in the exact way it needs to, which is the narrative that needs to be there, which is that Royal Ghosts are on a timer. They are down in gold. They are not winning this game. They have the numbers advantage. They need to act. And so the fight has to go on. And so when they start fighting, that as a 2, the most like I'm going to say is, oh my God, you know what I mean? When the steal happens.
Yeah,
more than that is too much.
You can definitely add like I was saying earlier, you can add your pop-offs, your vocal contribution to what's going on screen. You can be saying like Fire Giant low, they're sticking it, blah blah blah. Oh my God, whatever. Fill in whatever you feel necessary to supplement the energy, but you should literally never, in no circumstance, be talking over the Chair 1 when something interesting is going on.
Yeah, shameless self-plug. Go to my Twitter. I just put like a bunch of...
And what would that Twitter be, Goremizer? What's the ad?
You should just go to twitter.com/Goremizer.
Okay.
Listen to... I put up it was just like highlight reel. It's literally, that's all it is. There's no editing other than, here's a good clip, here's a good clip, here's a good clip. But listen, like Myth in the first one, it's a pentacall from Season 8. And he is getting hype, but not once is there any question as to who's doing the play-by-play? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And there's a similar thing a couple clips later with me and Trelly, where like Trelly, like he screams like he can't keep getting away with this behind my call, and it's just it adds so much to the context of it. But that is probably the limit, right? That's about the most you could do and say before it gets like too murky and you're talking over to each other too much. But yeah, I think that the unless something catastrophic happens, which again, you're online, how are you supposed to know? Benefit of the doubt. You should honestly, as a 2, unless it is you're a 5-man are grouping around Fire Giant and it's just one team and they're gonna get it so free that you like there's not even a point mentioning it beyond the fact that they're going to get it. So your chair 1 will probably say something like, oh wow, you know what? Royal Ghost, like they're gonna step up to this one. They've got all 5, not a soul from the other team in sight. They're gonna get this Fire Giant for free.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could probably add what's it called? You could probably add as a 2. Oh, and there's like the Fire Giant gonna go down. That's confirmed by this guy. You don't really need to because that was covered. Most of the time, like the death of the Titan, the death of big objectives, especially Fire Giants, unless, again, something either catastrophic is happening, should more, like, it defaults to the 1, right? There's obviously outside circumstances, but it should default to the 1.
And if you're talking, Gore, during the FG or during the Titan or whatever, I found very smart phrasing that I'm very proud of, and I want you to hear this. You can layer your voice underneath the chair 1, but not over the top of them. Difference being, you're not the focal point of what's going on. The audience is hearing you, and you're adding to what the chair 1 is doing, but that's exactly it. You are adding to it as opposed to taking away from it and taking the focus to yourself.
Yeah. It's what Cabbage said, right? You're adding seasoning to the dish.
Yeah.
This guy's the steak, you're the garlic butter it's being tossed in.
Which is very important, by the way.
Yeah, it's super important. It's going to make it taste better. It's going to be better because it's there. But you are not... Nobody's saying, oh, I'm having garlic butter for dinner.
Right.
You're having a steak. And so, like, that, it's very much that big difference. Is like, they're getting... Why garlic butter? Because it was the first thing I thought of, and specifically salt and pepper just seemed, like, very bland and too burgery. And I think my dad tossed it in something called Dale's sauce. There's a lot of good things to wait. Yeah, dude, shout out to my dad. I love my dad. There's a lot of way to make steak. There's a lot of way to cast a game. It's what you're, you know, maybe you're the garlic butter, maybe you're just a
pinch of salt.
Yeah, maybe you're just a pinch of salt. Maybe you're a different dish entirely. Maybe you're French fries and you're the seasoned salt. Maybe you're, you know, there's all sorts of things. But like whatever dish you're trying to make here, you got to remember what the main course and the sides here. Your chair 1's gonna be giving you the main course. You are the accompaniment. You are, you know, you're the bass line in a rock song where it's like absolutely necessary.
Ooh,
but also sometimes thankless, right? There's a lot of little analogies for it, but you shouldn't be doing what you did.
That's big picture. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Put their foot.
Oh damn, we're gonna have to listen to it again.
I know,
because that
tough.
teleport is going to be up. It's going to be able to teleport right in roughly 11 seconds, and here they go, burning this Fire Giant down, keeping Hydra's Hachiman faithful to day.
Low
Order
here, the
held.
Eagle Eye. Looks like they're gonna quit.
Oh yeah, that's even worse because like you can hear it online where
the Fire Giant away.
I can tell
Disaster, and now
you paused, but in a very obvious
onto the mounted archer.
I'm not done with this call yet way. But unfortunately,
Halanu picked it up like it was a I'm dropping this. But then there's a moment where you're both talking because he started talking thinking you were done, and you started talking because you weren't done. Then you're talking over each other. You both stop for a moment because you realize the other's still going, and then you start up again, and then he just kind of barrels through, which is just unfortunate. Yeah. And we've kind of like kicked this dead horse a lot. no need to like beat yourself up over it as long as this is the only time that happens. Like you should full stop listen to this Halanu and go, wow, that wasn't great. I guess I'll never do that again and move on with your life. It is not the end of the world, but this is, I mentioned earlier, there are some things that are objective, some things that are subjective about casting. This is one of those objective things where this is your chair one needs to be talking at this point. You need to be sprinkling in or nothing at all.
Especially because there's going to be like, there are talent pieces in the world where if you are doing the color commentary for them and you took a play like that, they're going to get you fired. Like, that's like that. I'm going to admit for Smite, that's not the world we live in. Yeah. It's not built that way. But like, if you were in a traditional sports setting and like you were taking a lot of the play-by-play calls from the play-by-play guy, you're not going to have a very long existence in that world, you know?
All right, looks like this should be the end of the game.
Macaroni hops onto the mounted archery, gets the slow. Sumik chasing things down, and look, the ultimate's back up. He teleported in. Macaroni getting a kill onto Kill Cam Kenny. In the background, Emoticon Father credited for the double kill there, despite most of that damage being dealt by Sumik. Sumik smacking the ground, angry. He wasn't the one to get those kills, but I think you're right, Halanu. That looks to be game. Kairos RPC versus the entirety of Hydra's Hachiman fan club. How long is he going to last? The Typhoon hits absolutely nothing. Gets knocked up and knocked down into the gray screen. It is a deicide in the favor of Hydra's Hachiman fan club. The damage onto the Titan is just too much. And Hydra's Hachiman fan club take it over the Royal Ghost, securing themselves a win in this tournament.
So two final notes. Go ahead.
No. I want to hear yours first because they're probably something similar.
So two final notes from me. Something that, again, we heard from Hindu a lot last week was preach the underdog story. Like, 99% of the time, Kairos does not defend this Titan. But if this is that 1%, you want to set this up where it's like, Kairos versus the world. What can one lone Susanoo do? And give it some energy, because it's the end of the game otherwise. So you're not losing anything by not setting it up for the best possible, the most interesting outcome. So preach the underdog story as much as possible. Or alternatively, you don't have to call the end of the game as the Titan dies. You can call, if hypothetically speaking, Kairos dies in that fight, you've got 40 seconds, all 5 members with EFG pushing down right side. Your end call can be as the deicide goes down, and you can just start giving post-game analysis. If you're sure they're just walking in with 5 people against 0 and ending the game, you can make your call earlier and then just start talking about how the game went. You don't have to match it to exactly as the last auto attack lands. That's when you call the end of the game.
I mean, very much at that point, like, to keep it alive, to keep interest alive, and also because there's a good chance, like, I wish I could remember the set it was. I called the end of a game, and the game didn't end. They, I can't remember what game it was, what set it was, but they held the defense. And if you are doing something like that, you make a call like that, the only possible way to salvage it is to get so out of your mind hyped about it that people forget you called it wrong. But most of the time, like in that instance, you can see they just killed 4 going into the Titan room. But Kairos, he's gonna back, has a chance to defend, goes in, but the damage is just too much. He's gonna go down, and alongside him goes the Titan. Something like that. That wasn't even that great. I'm gonna be real with you. That was bad. But similar to that, right? Where you can just doesn't matter that they're dealing, if they're after they get the deicide, they're not going to have trouble killing the Titan. That's not really where you need to hang on to as much, right? So you can just, hey, there's no more defense, this game's over.
Yep.
And then year 2 can just start going off about what was wrong, why that went, blah blah blah. And then you already said it, Cabbage, but the thing I was going to jump into was immediately just the mic. Your mic was peaking, but because you were trying to make sure that didn't happen, on a scale, if 10 is, 10's a world's call. No, 11 is a world. No, okay, 12 is a world's call.
This scale's a lot more layers than I've seen.
8 is a normal, 7 to 8 is a normal end call, maybe. 9 if it's a good game, right? 10 if it's just really fucking good, but probably only 10 if it's like a tournament, right? And in general, they should all still feel really hyped. Like you're the difference between like the reason it's a 1 to 10 scale and Worlds is at 12 is because if you like at a like Worlds finals play-by-play cast end call, you probably shouldn't be able to talk the next morning.
Yeah. Your voice should be completely gone.
General SBL like level, you're probably there, but like unfortunately for you, the mic was too peaky.
Yeah.
And so you kind of went the other way, so like you hit a 6, maybe. And it's just, yeah, fix that. Fix that.
Yeah, get that sorted out. Any final thoughts here for us, Goremizer, for either Mr. Cabbage or Mr. Halanu as we wrap up?
So for Halanu, I think you had a lot of good moments of joking and like good analysis. I think the biggest things to watch are things that I struggled with as well when I struggled. I like that I put it in past because sometimes I still do, depending on how much attention I'm paying. Dropping appropriate times, like watching when you should drop, getting out of there at the right moments to make sure that you're not talking over stuff that the chair 1 should be doing, but you're also not essentially like harming their cast by going too long, right? When objectives are getting low, or if they're like, Gold Furies like drop before they're down. Don't be afraid to get in there during play-by-play calls, but do not take it from the other guy. Just like keep it poppy. Mifflin's what's he? Oh wow, those.
Like you're scared almost.
Yeah, like because you're just excited about. Oh my god, like that damage. But a lot of that, like I think, was generally good. You have like a good what's it called, like vocal cadence, and like you aren't monotone, so you're inflecting really well, which is keeping people interested. You never went on too long, which is a huge deal. Like being able to shut the hell up sometimes, like. It's a goddamn superpower, I tell you. Like it means
sure
so
is.
much to talk for the right amount of time, and I think that you managed to do that if you're Helena. For Cabbage, I think, like you said, like hype generation stuff like that. I definitely think like if your mic is playing into that, don't be afraid to rip. I will give you a lot of credit. Like outside of that one team fight that we kind of picked apart on, where the kill feed was more or less just kind of getting read. Other than that, like I mean, your play-by-play had like a really good rhythm to it.
Yep.
There wasn't a moment where it never felt like you were getting lost in the fights, which can happen way easier than you think. Like the end call thing we had just kind of talked about, like frame it for the underdog. I think always you should be framing for the underdog just in general, because that makes the story way better than, hey, this team's stomping.
Sure.
But your cadence was well. It's just getting peaks and valleys. Like the hype moments are only hype because they are so much higher than the low moments. And so if you're, hitting an 8, you need to have some 4s in there to make sure that the 8 stand out. I think that your cast was, while limited, definitely like pump. Don't be afraid to pump energy in there. I don't know what kind of mic you have, but if you do have, like mine is right here, right? It's on a scissor arm. It is attached to my desk. If I lean back, I get quieter, and if I lean in, I get louder. And so when I was casting at home and it's not attached to my face, this is where I am, downtime, we're talking about it, or I'm trying to build up a little bit of tension, and then as I get louder, I get further from the mic, and that, like, if you have a mic like that then you could maybe try to balance, like, sometimes it's not, you don't even need to do it in the tech, right? You don't need, like, a gate that's going to cut you down or anything like that. You just get away from it and start yelling. But anything that I think can bring some more energy into it. Because like we got this new fancy audio board that like auto adjusts or whatever, and that's super cool. But like sometimes literally just getting that thing away from you and then letting yourself still be energetic. They go in, they steal the fire giant, and then they're gonna run back to base and look, and you just pull it closer as you start to bring it down because you know that you're gonna get quieter. Little moments that give you the pops, let you be excited. And ideally, fingers crossed for you in the future, don't peak your mic and cut it out. Alternatively, just peek your mic. Screw the people who are listening. Get excited. Fix it later.
Practice how you want to play, man. Like if eventually you're gonna fix it, then just cast how you would normally cast and don't worry about peeking the mic. I think that's the right call.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you to everybody for coming out to episode 3 here of the Cast to Couch. Obviously, thank you to one Mr. Goremizer for coming out and hanging out with us for the last 2.5 hours or however long it took us to get through, 30 minutes of gameplay?
That sounds about right for me.
Because we're both so long-winded, but it's been a great time. We do have the next episode planned already. Let me double-check here. So, Casting Couch episode 4 is going to be with J-Mac, and that's going to be on Sunday of next week. So not 2 days from now, so 9 days from now. Sunday at 7 p.m. is going to be the next... You
the
look
18th?
puzzled by that. Yes, the 18th.
Damn. Y'all better hope that Masters doesn't go long that day, baby.
That's what he said. He was like, we could maybe do 6, but, Masters might run long. I'm like, bro, should we, plan later? But whatever. It'll be somewhere in there. If that's not what ends up working out for us, I'll let you guys know in the Discord. But that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I have been Kaizo. I've been joined on my left here, other side by Goremizer, and we will catch you guys later.